Good morning to you.
Morning, how are things?
And Nathan Murphy is here, fresh from, I hope, his own hotel today. Nathan, how are you?
Yes, absolutely. The luxury of the Holiday Inn Express.
Look, you can't be too downhearted. You had the night of your life last night.
It was a very good night. It was, there's not too many top of the table clashes that are as one-sided as that and that are as definitive as that. Manchester City were out of this world for large parts of this game, and 4-1, probably the least they deserve. Erling Haaland could have had 5 goals, so Arsenal probably got away with one.
It actually reminded me of the Barcelona 5-0 against Real Madrid when Pep was in charge and he was changing the face of football forever. It was that dominant, and like Arsenal did well for it not to be 8 or 9. It could easily have been 8 or 9, but spiritually it's going to feel for them like it was 8 or 9, and they know how far away they are now from being title contenders, really. Because while the table suggests that they've been in contention, the reality is that Manchester City were going to squash them at some point. They just toyed with them like a cat toying with a mouse until the end of the season and went, you had your fun, buddy.
I think that's unfair on Arsenal, because this was somewhat in Arsenal's own hands before tonight. So Arsenal were the mouse who suddenly decided, you know what, I'm going to give the cat an opportunity. I'm just going to present myself for them and see what they want to do with me and let them play with me if they want by drawing their last 3 games. Like, they had this. If they had beaten Liverpool, if they'd beaten West Ham, if they'd beaten Southampton, it's a very different story. And it's a very different game last night. But it felt as though the hangover from the players, that Mikel Arteta and those Arsenal players weren't able to get themselves back up last night. They looked a beaten docket right from the off. And a lot of that, though, I think goes down to Manchester City, who just don't give a sucker a second chance. They were on it from minute one, and we've seen that in their top performances all season, at home against United, at home against Liverpool, that De Bruyne, Haaland, they set a tempo early on, Grealish as well, of getting in the opposition's faces, of winning it back again and again and again, and just this relentless brilliance. And yesterday wasn't at times about flowing football or any of that. It was just actually, we're going to come at you again.
All right, we're going to kill your line and try and reset it there. Obviously, the gremlins in the line, all the way from Manchester.
Yeah, it's tough. It's. I think they have Wi-Fi in Manchester and 4G. Flowing hair. Sorry, of Erling Haaland. Was it Samson in the Bible had his strength in his hair?
Yeah.
He was eventually vanquished by his enemy and his lover Delilah. So who's Delilah in this? I wouldn't be much of a Bible kind of guy, Ger, but I like to bring some sort of a reference here to Samson and Haaland. It was a little bit intimidating, and I think that was his intention and purpose. As soon as that hair comes down, you're like, well, he's going to score now. 100%. He's had some chances. Ramsdale has had some decent saves, half chances.
They were good saves.
Good saves.
They were good saves. There was one that wasn't a good save. The one where he's clean through 1-on-1 at the start of the second half.
Scuffed, yeah.
I was like, that wasn't amazing. Other than that, you would say that there was last-ditch blocks, and Arsenal, if things had gone their way, if all the other chances had been missed, the gazillions of them, then perhaps there would have been a bit. They could have finished better. But Nathan's back anyway. Nathan,
you know where to go for good Wi-Fi, eh?
Yeah, not the Holiday Inn Express in Manchester Airport.
Yeah, I don't know how much of that you got. Is that I think Arsenal gave them a chance in the last few weeks, but City, they were just breathtaking last night.
They did take it to another level. Even listen to the Pep afterwards, he's like, "Oh, we decided to really play to De Bruyne and Haaland's strengths. It's like the most obvious tactic of all time, and yet it was Haaland turning provider. Like the first goal was just ridiculous."
Well, it was ridiculous from an Arsenal point of view that Holding would think that he would be able to get in tight, have the strength to hold off Haaland. It's never going to happen. It was a lovely play from Haaland to lay it off to De Bruyne. But even then, Gabriel seems to just stand off a little bit too much, sort of shows him the way. The shot isn't the most powerful shot. It does skim off the surface a couple of times. And, the match has just started, so the pitch has just been watered. So maybe it's a little bit slippy. But again, you feel that Ramsdale can do a bit more. So, Arsenal didn't help themselves with that first goal. But, the key to last night was, Pep goes back to a back four. There's no John Stones in midfield. He shows the respect to Saka and Martinelli, who never get a touch of the ball. Like, both of them taken off. The entire front four taken off. But playing De Bruyne just off Erling Haaland, I've never seen the two of them in such close quarters. And you've got two such incredibly talented and technically technical players and two such strong players, like the amount of interchanges that they had that just opened up Arsenal at will, like that was the key to the game, that suddenly you have De Bruyne getting the ball consistently in really dangerous areas. And like it was, because Arsenal were so poor and never even threw a punch, I think it's easy to say that, you know, they didn't turn up and they'll be devastated. But I think even if City played like that, they wouldn't have been able to deal with them.
I'd love to see it. I'd love to see somebody, you know.
Well, that's it. I think if you look back on last season, like City of the City Liverpool games of the last 3 or 4 years have probably been as good as we've had in club football. But even in those games, you think to the 2-2 this time last year at the Etihad, City played like that for large parts of the game, like where they absolutely crushed Liverpool. You thought there's a massive gulf in class, but Liverpool had a bit of experience and a bit about them where, when they had the opportunity to regather, they come back and suddenly they have their own 15-minute spell. I remember last year after halftime, they come roaring out of the blocks. They come back into the game. And Arsenal never had that. And they couldn't find a way to get Odegaard, Martinelli, Saka, Jesus into the game. And I said to David Meyler afterwards, you do look at that Arsenal team last night, and Mikel Arteta's done a bloody good job getting these into contention, because behind those three, there was very, very little.
Sean Roy Phillips was making it, and he was a bit of a rib of his dad on Twitter close to the end of the game, slagging Arsenal. But he was making the point after the match, against City, you can either adopt the high press and really, really press them. You can sit back and let them at you. But Arsenal seemed to almost be somewhere, as John Virgo might say in the snooker commentary, betwixt and between. They were a little bit of a mid-press. It was almost like they were non-committal, Nathan. They didn't know which way they were going.
Yeah, and it was interesting looking at Guardiola and Arteta, and one of the great things from our commentary position at the Etihad is you're right behind the two technical areas. And I've never seen Arteta as subdued during a game. He never seemed to raise his voice to the referee, even didn't wave his arms, didn't just gesticulate at any stage during the game, just sort of stood there with his arms crossed and looked a little bit lost, which is totally at odds with the Arteta we've seen for so much of the season, where there's been so much emotion from that, you know, what he's had on the sideline. You wonder if it's had a negative effect at times. Maybe he'd made a conscious decision he wasn't going to get built into a night where, you know, the atmosphere at the Etihad was rarely as hyped as it ever was last night. Whereas Guardiola was the complete opposite. When the first goal went in, Guardiola didn't run down and celebrate with Kevin De Bruyne. He ran onto the pitch and berated Ederson about something that had happened 5 minutes later that had been annoying him. And he was at his players constantly about them not pressing high enough, about them not going long quick enough, whereas Arteta just seemed a little bit quiet. And you're right, it felt as though while City changed their tactics from the last few weeks out of respect for what Arsenal had done, Arsenal just sort of rocked up with the same old and hoped that it would work, even though it hasn't worked over the last few weeks.
Or ever against Manchester City. Is it 12 defeats in a row? Was that the stat column had in our pre-show meeting? 12
defeats. Well, exactly, yeah. And Arteta's beaten every Premier League team, but he's lost every game against Manchester City. I was listening to you guys on in the half hour beforehand, and when the Kyle Walker news came through, I was like, actually, is Pep getting in his own head again here? Is this the template that we've seen where supposedly inferior teams manage to win 1-0, they miss a hatful of chances, and that first 3-4 minutes and there's a chance missed already, you're like, ooh, and then the goal goes in, and that completely changes the game. And I think that subdues Arteta specifically because that's the game up. They're not coming back from that. I don't know. Is this Pep reaching some new heady heights, or actually are we being set up here? Like Real Madrid got hammered at the weekend by Girona. So at the moment, you would expect that this is going to be a cakewalk over the two legs for Manchester City, a team bristling with form and energy and all their best players playing unbelievably well. Phil Foden can't get a look in, but then has one nice touch when he comes on. And it's like, I expect him to romp home everything for the rest of the season. I actually expect him to duff up Man United in the final. Or Pep gets in his own head again. By far and away.
In his box of tricks and feels it too much and is like, we have 7 defenders playing against Real Madrid.
Surely not. They're by far and away the best team in Europe right now, but there have been plenty of seasons recently where Real Madrid have not been the best team in Europe and have that nous and know-how and can somehow get it done. Manchester City have 3 games in the next 9 days between now and then. So they can't take their eyes off that because, again, they are still second. While they've games in hand, they still can't afford to slip up. They need to keep this winning run going. But last night was just a return to type. So the last few weeks has been Pep trying something very different and going with this John Stones move into midfield, which has worked very, very well. Last night they went back to what we have seen for the vast majority of the season with just a flat back 4. Now Manuel Akanji stood in at left back because Nathan Aki is out injured. But it was more further up the pitch that it wasn't as if Akanji and Walker even had much defending to do, because it was so rare that Saka and Martinelli got the ball in a position where they could have a run at them, where they could do any damage. And like Grealish last night again was just outstanding. And you mentioned Phil Foden. Phil Foden's had appendicitis, which has meant the usual rotation that might happen between them. But it is very difficult to see in those big games. And Foden was always, probably after De Bruyne, number 2 on the team sheet for the biggest matches of the season for Manchester City. It's very difficult to see how he gets back in because Grealish's work rate last night,
sensational.
He was the one getting back, supporting Akanji. But also what I thought was interesting was how they used him constantly as the player to try and draw Arsenal on. So he would drop in behind Akanji, they played a little triangle, and next thing, he's gone. Like the burst of pace and always picking out the right pass inside. And Bernardo Silva does the same on the other side. He does it. He's just so understated. He covers so much ground. But like they're sacrificing in some ways an awful lot of the games. We probably saw Jack Grealish have half the amount of dribbles on the edge of the area that he would normally have last night because he was aware that this was a different type of game. So having them there and basically a sort of straight 4-4-2 in some ways, with Gundogan and Rodri in the middle of midfield and De Bruyne and Haaland as a front 2. Like maybe there's something in keeping it simple for some of these games.
It's funny, this narrative of Jesus and Zinchenko. Why would Pep ever get rid of them? Look at them. Look at what they're doing with Arsenal. But in games like this, you can actually see that they're nowhere near. They're not in the pecking order. And even the rest of the Arsenal top players like Odegaard and Xhaka would not be players that Pep would ever sign. So like,
I don't know about that. I think there'll be an overreaction to this on the quality of Odegaard, Saka, Martinelli. Like if they're in that Manchester City team, they're getting so much more possession. They're getting so much more of the ball.
Martin Keown made the point after the match last night that Arsenal are 10 years behind City. He said they're moving in the right direction, but they're 10 years behind, which felt like a stretch, maybe an over-exaggeration.
Not prone to over-exaggeration sometimes, Martin. I'd be sending a reducer in on those guys if I was like, they have VAR now, Martin.
Yeah, back in my day.
10 years, but everyone's 10 years behind Manchester City until potentially the results of this investigation come out. And you do have to try and remind yourself that this Manchester City are 115 different counts they're facing, accusations that they're going to be facing. Now, there've been accusations before, there've been issues before, they've managed to get away with it, doesn't seem to have tarnished them in any way. And they're going to have the medals in the pocket at the end of the season, so you can put all the asterisks you want in 3 or 4 years' time. It's not really going to matter to these Manchester City players right now, but it does feel that's the only opportunity for these clubs to try and get back. Like one team pops up every season and goes on a little bit of a run and puts it up to them, but they are miles ahead of everybody. And like, are they going to slow down? I don't think so. Are they going to have a summer where Pep Guardiola looks at the squad this summer and thinks, you know what, I'm grand with that?
At the moment, it doesn't look that way. Yeah, no, it doesn't. And like they're able to sign the Calvin Phillips of the world purely as a spoiler, it seems, to make sure that nobody else then gets a holding midfielder who might be able to influence the season. And it's the money is absolutely very important, and it's right that you bring it up. I do want to play this. This is you speaking to Akanji in the mix zone in the immediate aftermath of the game last night.
Yeah, it felt great, and we know it's going to be a big game. And yeah, that's how we played for 90 minutes. I think we showed a great team performance over 90 minutes, and that was a really important win for us today.
Your position at left back, there was a lot of talk during the week that Arsenal might try and target the wings with Martinelli and Saka in the form they've been in this season. Have you played that position often? Did you have much time to prepare for it?
I think I had 2 games in this position at Dortmund, but it was like 3-4 years ago already. So it's not something I'm used to, but when a team needs me there, when the manager thinks it's a good decision to play me there, then I will do it. I try to do whatever it takes to win the game, and yeah, that's also what I tried today.
The games are coming so thick and fast. Do you actually get much time then the training pitch to plot it all out and try and get your head around what exactly you need to do to tackle Saka?
Yeah, we didn't have a lot of time to prepare the game because we play every third day, but that's enough. That's enough for us. We are used to this rhythm, and we're feeling great in it. So we got to keep going.
It's been a brilliant week. 3 different competitions. There's going to be a lot of talk about the treble. I'm sure you as a player are going to say you're not talking about it, but it must be a huge motivating factor, the opportunity that presents itself over the next month to make that sort of history.
Of course, it's a great opportunity, but it's still there's still a lot to play for. There's still like 7 Premier League games. There's still the semi-final in the Champions League. There's the final in the FA Cup. So yeah, it's possible to win it all, but it's also possible to win nothing at all in the end. So we gotta stay humble. We gotta focus on the next game because that's the most important, and that's against Fulham on Sunday.
Tonight.
Thank you.
It's so hard to stay humble. It is so hard to stay humble. When they're so bloody good, it is so hard to stay humble. They're so dominant.
How good is that guy? I mentioned the amount of money that they spent, but 15 million quid to bring in him last summer. Now, they have a relationship with Borussia Dortmund, so I'm sure there's lots of ways of getting these deals done, but nobody spoke about Akanji coming in. He's played all but 2 Premier League games. He's played right across the back 4, and he's a great, solid, very experienced international in a season when they've had constant injuries with their centre-backs. He's been a constant in that back 3 or back 4. So, yeah, another very good piece of business done by Manchester City.
I was going to ask, is it possible that Arsenal don't win another league game this season? And then I checked their fixtures, and who have they got next? Chelsea. It's Chelsea.
Well, of course,
and Frank Lampard, who is literally the worst manager at the moment in the history of football.
Unless, of course, Mauricio Pochettino rocks up between now and then, and they somehow offer him so much money that he has no choice but to take it between now and the end of the season. Is Lampard going to be manager by next Tuesday night? Surely not.
I don't know. I mean, there's a little bit of me if I'm a Chelsea fan going, sorry, Mitchell, you're recharging your batteries. How long is it since you've had it? You're scouting for next season? What are you putting your team together?
Mauricio likes a good glass of wine. He likes to get himself in shape. When he's ahead of these big jobs, so he's going to have a couple of nice glasses of wine over the next couple of months, and then spend the summer getting himself ready to rock. But this can't go on at Chelsea. Look at this squad he picked last night, where they basically just dumped all the players that they paid so much money for in January. The fixture list isn't kind for Arsenal. It's so strange when you're leaving last night. The conversation, Arsenal are still top of the Premier League. Even the conversation last night when they're 5 points clear going into that game, you just cannot see Manchester City with their fixture list dropping points twice, and with their goal difference, they need to at least lose one of them too, and Arsenal to win all their games. No, it felt as though Arsenal were done, and yeah, the likelihood is it just peters out. It'll be a big achievement for Arteta if he can get them up and they can go and they win all the rest of the games and put it up to Manchester City, and maybe make it interesting. City play Chelsea as well right towards the end of the season. Who knows, maybe they'll have found a bit of form.
Sorry, we
should
do the rest of those fixtures then. So Chelsea are at home, and then they're away at Newcastle. Is there anybody in the world who's making the case that they're going to go?
Arsenal are.
Yeah. So, is there anybody in the world who can make the case for me that Arsenal are going to go to St James's Park?
Not a chance.
And do a job on a Sunday afternoon at 4:30? I don't actually know. I don't have but I presume City will be playing before that, because they're playing on the Tuesday night against Real Madrid. And then they've got Brighton at home. Now, Brighton stuffed up last night, but if they hadn't, I think Brighton would still be in Champions League mode. And then they're at Forest, who last night had a massive victory, and so therefore won't be...
Still need the points.
Yeah, more than likely, and will still be in the hunt for safety at that stage. And then they've got Wolves at home on the last day of the season. I think they'll beat Wolves.
Yeah, it's a very, very difficult fixture list. Now, maybe Brighton have given it all they have, and they're the perfect team for teams to be facing, if something to fight for between now and the end of the season. The only thing that could derail Manchester City is somehow, what Akanji said there, they're in the rhythm of playing every 3 games, that somehow they're upset by that. But you look at their fixture list, Fulham on Sunday. Fulham are getting in that nice mid-table position where, do they really fancy it against Manchester City, or are they going to look elsewhere to pick up their points? They got West Ham at home. They always beat West Ham at home next Wednesday night. They got Leeds. Okay, Leeds are going to be scrapping away. You just hope, as a neutral, that they would just give a bit of a glimmer of hope. Drop points in one of those games. Arsenal keep winning, and maybe it gives a bit of excitement between now and the end of the season. But you're right. with the way Arsenal have been playing over the last few weeks, going to St James's Park to take on Newcastle and the way Newcastle have been playing.
Yeah.
Newcastle probably be favourites for that game.
It just feels a little bit like false gods, though, that this Arsenal team, you're all giving them credit for overachieving with this group of players, but this was their season. I keep seeing like, the team's really young, the age profile of particularly the attacking players, and they've got good centre back, and it's like, yeah, grand. But when Pochettino finished second, his team had the youngest average age in the Premier League. And, this is definitely going to happen. We can write this in and mark it. You can't. It's like, next season, Man United are going to be better. Liverpool are going to be better. Chelsea are going to have a manager who's not bad. You're going to have Newcastle with a further season, and all of a sudden,
maybe Arsenal are better. Maybe Arsenal are better. But that will come down to investment. The problem with Tottenham was they put themselves in such a brilliant position, and heard Damien Delaney on Monday night, going through them one to another. Wow, that was a heck of a team. But they never went and invested and supported them and put themselves in a position that when, Dele Alli had this huge dip in form, that there was anybody there ready to step in. So are Arsenal ready to back Mikel Arteta now and buy, 1-2 centre halves? Are they willing to go and back him and spend a lot of money on a centre midfielder? Like, they're not. Nobody's ever mentioning Arsenal in the mix for Jude Bellingham, despite the fact they're guaranteed Champions League football next season.
That's true. There's no chance that this is a flash in the pan, is there? Like a one-season wonder for Arsenal.
There is some chance. That's the point. That
absolutely.
It's not guaranteed that Arsenal are going to be in the top 2 next season at all. It's not guaranteed they're going to be title contenders next season at all. I think that's the one. The question here from Shane: is this how the Premier League plays out for the next 10 seasons? One team challenges and then City blow them away on the home straight. I think to Nathan's point that unless the financial investigation and allegations are proven and there is a serious enough punishment to prevent them, even then, if Pep was to stay and they were able to keep all their current players, like if the punishment isn't relegation, if the punishment is like a 3-season transfer embargo, they've got enough young players and they've got an age profile of a squad that they would still be able to compete, and you wouldn't back against them. But it would even the playing field a little bit.
I definitely would. Like, you're right when you look at Foden and Alvarez coming off the bench. But the age profile, it is interesting. You now look at Kevin De Bruyne at 31, Bernardo Silva, Ilkay Gundogan, all getting into their 30s, that they are going to need to rejuvenate again over the next couple of years. But if Manchester United, whoever buys Manchester United, if they invest, and if they, maybe even more importantly than the investment, because United have spent so much money, that they actually sort out the footballing side and that the support structures are in place and that they buy the right players. But Manchester United can get there. Chelsea can get there. Liverpool probably going to be more difficult unless FSG decide they're going to go and spend a little bit more money. But we do have to acknowledge all that has gone on behind the scenes and all that is questionable about what's happened with Manchester City. But they have got it right on the footballing side. It's easier with all that money, but they have gone after Erling Haaland from a very young age. They've put the processes in place to ensure that there was really no doubt as to where Erling Haaland was going to go. There was talk, remember, at the time of, well, Haaland has his career mapped out and he's going to spend 3 years at City and then he's going to go to Real Madrid.
Well, he might.
Maybe that would still happen.
Yeah, I'm not ruling that out. I got more comments here. Sorry.
Now, obviously, all these things have been cancelled. Go on.
I don't think they've been cancelled. I think that if he wins the Champions League this season, what other mountains are there for him to climb at Manchester City? He'll spend 2 seasons, then go and spend 3 seasons at Real Madrid. That's what you would do if you're sketching out a fantasy life. Like, you go to your dad's club and you win the Champions League and you score 55 goals. I don't know. Could he get to 60?
He wants to win Ultra. He has to win the Carabao Cup next season, Ger.
Okay. He's on 49.
Yeah. Well,
he's on 49 and he's got 10 games left.
Well, I was just wondering, do they keep playing him in all the games now? I'm not sure they do. I'd say the rotation starts heavily and you absolutely make sure that he is just fit for those big 3 games that are left, the 2 Real Madrid games and then the game against one of the Milan sides in Istanbul, and that's all that matters because they are going to win the league, and I don't think Arsenal are going to pick up enough points to make it even interesting beyond maybe Chelsea get them back on track.
Yeah, But again, that's not going to happen quickly enough because they've got 3 games in the next 10 days and he will start certainly 2 of them against, at home against West Ham if he starts again. Hat-trick next Wednesday night.
All right. Does this not put Liverpool's ridiculous points totals when finishing second into context? Madness, they've won it only once after being that much better than a team like this season's Arsenal. I mean, that is true. Bruce Robbo Fan Club says Frank heading for the door marked Stellini. I mean, he may well be. I think it'd be difficult for Todd Bowley to humiliate the Hall of Famer Frank Lampard in such a stunning way by firing him after 5 games. But he might have to do it. You might just have to do it, Todd.
Someone was making
like,
a
is
point.
Frank heading towards a position where they have to withdraw the Chelsea legend status, where he's no longer on the wall outside the club? He just brought great shame. We loved you once, Frank. But
It won't get to that, I don't think. I don't think people see this current Chelsea demise. It's not even Lampard's fault. If Lampard continues to lose games, ultimately there's a common denominator there that's not Frank Lampard. It's like he's
would it be in a better
unlucky man
position
to
if
come in.
Graham Potter had stayed in charge?
Yeah, definitely. They would absolutely.
probably,
They wouldn't have lost their last 5 games, and they might have been better in the European fixture. Absolutely would have been better if Graham Potter had stayed in charge. And we now, like, we know that. That's not like, I think they would have. Like, Frank Lampard has been an absolute disaster. Talking last night again about not having a magic wand. It's like, that's not your job. Your job is just to inject a little bit of purpose and confidence for a very short period of time. You're not trying to fix the long-term thing. You're literally there as a stopgap because they've just hired your
You're
replacement.
a vibes guy. Vibes.
Exactly. And he's not good at the vibes, it turns out.
All these guys happy.
They needed you and Bez. United and Chelsea spent loads, but the difference is that Pep is a brilliant manager and they're very well run. They still have 115 charges against them, thus as Noel Cahill. We've done that. It's amazing what you can do with a good coach, good players and an impressive state apparatus, says Nigel Gallagher. I presume Ger's hoping for a draw tonight to keep Villa in the chase for Europe, up to Villa. I mean, I actually, no. I don't think Villa are going to qualify for the Champions League. And so you want Europa League, not Europa Conference League. And so you want Man United to crush Spurs tonight and for us to finish ahead of Spurs. That's what I think. Fergus Keogh says, Pep, the great pretender, given the money, no object, freedom to buy any player he wants and then discard him and buy another if it doesn't work. Nathan could win the league. Speaking of Nathans who could win the league, Wunderkind Nathan from Ted Lasso. That's been the major theme of season 3. You're a complete fanboy, it turns out. You met the crew of Ted Lasso last night. That's why I said you're the greatest night of all time.
What a photo.
Oh, well, absolutely. Absolutely. Fair play to David Meyler. He's a good photographer, isn't he? Yes. So before the game, I was down watching Erling Haaland miss a lot of chances in the warm-up. Erling Haaland missed a lot of chances, which was a good precursor for what was to come. And I looked down to my left and I realised there's Noel Gallagher and Jason Sudeikis and all the rest of the Ted Lasso crew. Didn't think too much more of it. I do love Ted Lasso. And I was walking down to the mix zone afterwards and standing outside the mix zone were the 3 of them, Jamie Tart, Coach Beard, and Ted Lasso himself. Where it's like they're either great actors or they're actually just staying in character, because I did feel like I was with the 3 characters. Like Jason Sudeikis is wearing his Richmond jacket.
Wow. Method acting.
And they were standing outside the mix zone, obviously waiting to meet the Manchester City players and Arsenal players as they came out, and I thought, screw it, you know what, I'm going to get my photo.
Before the game?
Very nice men they were. No, after the game.
After the game. Sorry, after the game. I thought, sorry, you were talking about missing the chances. Okay, so they're after the game, they're in the mix zone, like fanboying the footballers, and you're there fanboying the famous actors.
Yeah, it's a never-ending circle of fanboying.
Well, it's not never-ending. It stops at you. There's no one fanboying you,
true.
It turned out.
That is very, very true. I didn't fanboy the footballer, so I think that counts as staying professional.
Okay.
I don't fanboy the footballers in the mix zone. It's just
okay.
Just the,
I get
superstars.
that. Yeah. Well saved. Yeah, well saved. That's a fair point. And so, give us more celebrity gossip here, Nathan. This is the bit that could go viral for us.
Well, I was hoping Noel Gallagher might appear again because just to, well, I am a big Oasis fan and I do love Noel Gallagher. Not quite in the scale of Cullum, so just more just absolutely sick in Cullum. I was hoping to get the old Noel Gallagher photo, but it didn't quite happen. But yeah, obviously, I was in America for a few weeks, and Ted Lasso is off the charts big in America. So it's obviously, it's the number 1 success story for Apple in this part of the world. But in America, it is football now. Football has been viewed firstly through the prism of Ted Lasso, and it's helping grow absolutely everything else. And this season, as you mentioned, they have the access with the Premier League where it's a bit more like real life. And obviously, you said West Ham are a big part of this season, which I do wonder how they feel about that. They obviously signed up for it and are happy about the publicity. But yeah, they were very chilled out. They were just hanging around, like all the other rich folk who hang around those places. Waiting to meet the footballers.
No journalism done. No, because this is the last season, and they have said it's not the end of the characters. Did you ask them is it going to be beard? Is it going to be tart?
Photos. Just get the photo and done.
What's going to happen?
No, you don't want to be. You want to be that guy? They don't want to talk to me.
Well, you'd be on TMZ now with 15 million views. I mean, did you
not hear that Manuel Akanji interview? Is that not going to go places?
I'm not sure. A bit niche.
Sudeikis is a funny guy. I remember meeting Bryan Cranston before. The thing I found, Nathan, about these Hollywood guys is they all smell great. Like when you're
After a football match and they've been there for a long time, so don't think anyone was smelling too good.
Turns out being rich makes you smell good.
Jamie Tart looked like he was smelling all right. The photo was even reflective of their personalities. Coach Beard is a bit, out there. Jamie Tart looks like he'd rather be anywhere else, and Ted Lasso's just happy-go-lucky kind of guy.
Yeah, very good, very good. Roy Kent is the comedic genius behind that, and then also has like another massive hit in the States as well. He's there you go.
Yeah, it's a shame he wasn't there last night.
I did do an Noel Gallagher interview about football on the way into the World Cup final in 2006. Did I name drop that one?
No,
go for it.
Just to piss Colin off. It was excellent. It was a walk and talk. Got about 4 minutes.
It's incredible watching Gallagher at the Etihad at a big game. Like, he just has the run of the play. So he just basically walks along the sideline, shaking hands with every footballer. And last night, as you would expect for a game of that magnitude, like, it felt like all the Arsenal Invincibles were there on the sideline, which can't help when you're warming up, when you have Dixon, Winterburn, Keown, Vieira, Pires, all standing right there in front of you. But Noel Gallagher just goes around shaking hands, does a few interviews as he's going around, wherever he sees. Yeah, no bother at all. Up to his box. Happy days.
Yeah, looked like he was having a crack in the box. Right, Nathan, good work. Well done.
Thanks, guys.
Oh, yeah, okay. Jesus. That was, no, the praise isn't good enough.
He's friends with Hollywood people now, doesn't he? He doesn't want to talk to us.
Yeah, whatever.
Like, leave me alone.
Whatever.
Yeah.
I see some people giving out about Ted Lasso. What are you doing? What's wrong with you?
I haven't got onto the Ted Lasso vibe yet. Is it worth watching? If it is worth starting now, yeah.
Yeah. It's always worth starting.
Okay, I'll get into it.
The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now.
What a line. Yeah. No, I'm gonna get into it. I like the sound of it, I think, is the point.
Bayern win the league every year, whoever the manager is. At Barca, when you inherit Messi, Xavi, Iniesta, blah blah blah, he didn't inherit. Xavi was asking for a transfer, and then Guardiola goes, "No, you're going to be my main man." Like, come on, you got to know some football history here. Like, read Graham's book. It's like, honestly, Pep, for all his foibles, what he did at Barcelona was change football. You just don't know now. Everyone thought Arsenal would beat Southampton comfortably. I mean, it's true. It is true. Dennis Ryan says, more OTB, unchecked hyperbole. City are not by far and away the best team in Europe. Trent Alexander, best fullback in the world. How did that pan out for Nathan? Martinelli, world class. Trent was certainly the most creative fullback in world football for a period of time there, Dennis. I don't know if everybody else was necessarily saying he's the best fullback in world football, but yeah. Just seems City are always able to turn up the ante late on in the season, says Andrew Moynihan. Could Arsenal finish third? They look toothless. In fairness to Man City, it's a real fairy tale story, says John Claffey. Pep was playing De Zerbi ball last night, baiting Arsenal press and then using Haaland as a traditional number 9 to transition into attack quickly with De Bruyne playing off him. I think that's why he was given out to Ederson. It obviously wasn't for that specific incident.
Yeah. I do wonder, and this point was made by Arsenal fans last night, has Arteta played too much of this starting 11 too often? Like, are they just at the stage now where energy is the thing? Like,
perhaps.
Partey he didn't look fit whatsoever last night. So I think that was the case for a few of those Arsenal players. So maybe there's something in that.
Kenny the dad says you should find Owen wherever he is in the world and ask him his thoughts on it all. Inspector Corp says Owen is taking ayahuasca in the jungle somewhere to cope with it all. Ayahuasca does cleanse the system inside and out.
Something like that. There's puking that's part of the process apparently. Maybe Arsenal fans felt like puking last night.
A lot of puking going on. Other orifices may also be involved. 4 minutes past 8 this morning here on OTB AM. We'd love to hear from you. 087 9180 180 is the WhatsApp number. You can get in touch on the YouTube stream, as many of you have been doing, or you can tweet us at Off the Ball AM. And we're live every morning with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition is available now. After the break, the Arsenal perspective from the Evening Standard's Simon Collings.
OTB AM,
the Sports Breakfast Show from Off the Ball.
He's got O'Shea in behind, and is this the clincher? Oh, you bet it is! It's a goal for Arsenal, and Merson has scored it.
It's the Arsenal legend Paul Merson and UEFA Champions League winners John O'Shea and Wes Brown, and they are coming to Dublin.
Gets across it, Brown!
Myself and Joe are going to be hosting a very special UEFA Champions League roadshow in partnership with Just Eat. It's on May 3rd in the Mansion House in Dublin. It is going to be a cracking night. It's an exclusive off-air event. So if you want to be there, get on to offtheball.com/events. Just Eat, the official food delivery partner of the UEFA Champions League.
OTB GAA.
I've decided the only man to save hurling is Joe Canning.
Right, you're calling for that now.
But wouldn't it be ideal?
He's had a nice time, you know. He's
been on the couch in the Sunday game.
Well, he's been travelling the world.
Wouldn't that,
Let's be having you, Joe.
Save the hurling season if Joe was parachuted back into the Galway team for the season? And Stephen Cluxton, who are you?
Subscribe to the OTB GAA podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
All right, it is 6 minutes past 8 this morning here on OTB AM. I'm delighted to say Simon Collings joins us now from the Evening Standard to give us the thoughts on the Arsenal perspective specifically. Simon, we're in the middle of a late season swoon for Arsenal at the moment. Can they stop it?
Doesn't feel like it after last night. I think everyone knew sort of Arsenal headed to the Etihad with the title on the line, given the situation with City's game in hands. And as much as it was about the point for me for Arsenal, I kind of feel they needed a result to shift the momentum, to get the title back on track. And now we've seen so many times in the past when City get ahead in title races, they just gallop off into the distance. And I think for Arsenal, it's kind of feels like that dream of winning the title has gone. And yeah, the nature of the result as well last night probably did damage too.
The performance was so overwhelming from Manchester City. Is there anything in retrospect that Arsenal could have done to interrupt the pattern that we saw?
I mean, the difficult thing is if you look at who he had available, I think he probably played what most supporters would argue was his best team. The debate I would have is, as difficult as it is, how great Arsenal been, do you need to sort of adapt when you're playing someone like City? And before the match, I was looking through to see which teams had success there. And I think Brentford were one of the few teams that won the only second the Premier team to stop Haaland scoring. And they dropped very deep, played three centre-backs and targeted De Bruyne. That was their plan. And Arsenal basically did the opposite of that, pressed very high, gave Haaland space to go into. So I think in retrospect, not so much the personnel, but the way that Arsenal set up kind of played into City's hands. If you're going to push that high, if you're going to try and get tight to Haaland, you run the risk of him rolling you. And I think the way we saw him and De Bruyne linked up summed up how Pep won that battle quite comfortably. It sounds, Simon, like a bit of a tired cliche maybe and rationalisation after the fact, but the experience of the City players in games like this, games that titles could hinge on, versus the lack thereof within the Arsenal squad, is that a factor that we should take into consideration after last night? I think so. I think you've got to appreciate for a lot of these Arsenal players, this is their first title race. And I think it was the same at the game at the Emirates, where City just sort of managed the whole occasion a bit better than Arsenal. It was a point that Thierry Henry had made a few sort of weeks ago, that Arsenal had got a bit too emotional in this title race, which in itself is tiring for the players. And City just almost kind of feel, like a robotic juggernaut, which just rolls on and on and on. And Haaland sort of sums it up, doesn't it? You never really felt like last night that they were going to sort of get overawed and lose their heads. They were just efficient. They got the job done. And for Arsenal, maybe there's something to learn in that if you want to be a team that's constantly competing at the top, sometimes you've got to try and take the emotion out of these things. The absence of William Saliba undoubtedly crops up when a result like that happens, or results of recent happens. And he's been out since that Lisbon game, and you look at Arsenal's form since and the goals they've conceded, Simon, are there just no answers? Is Rob Holding just not good enough as a replacement? Has this Saliba injury almost led to the downfall of the title race? Yeah, and the big thing with that Saliba injury in the night it happened was that Tomiyasu injured his knee on the same occasion. So I think if Tomiyasu was fit, it's quite conceivable you would have been seeing White and Gabriel playing centre-backs and Tomiyasu playing right-back, but that right side options was dwindled quite significantly. Holding, he's a fine squad player. I think we've seen in the Europa League that he comes in and does a job late on in games. He can come on and help the team, but for an extended period of time, which is basically he's going to play sort of 11 league games on the spin, I don't think he's good enough to be playing for a team that's competing at the top of the Premier League. And it's quite brutal to say that, but it's just a matter of the fact. And when Arsenal look at the recruitment in the summer and their investment and they want to improve the squad, midfield we know is a big area. We know they want to sign Declan Rice, but I think this run of games has shown how there needs to be someone coming in at centre-back. There needs to be a bit more depth for Gabriel and Saliba, because at the moment the drop-off just seems too big.
They also will next season have proper Champions League action to contend with, and so therefore the need for the squad it's a force multiplier. It's not just, you can't kind of see your way through the early stages of the Champions League, particularly when you don't have the experience of it that Arsenal in this squad don't have.
Definitely, and I think there's definitely an accusation to be lobbied at Arteta that he hasn't rotated enough this season. I mean, the first half of the campaign, as you say, he had the luxury of playing the Europa League, and he would basically make 10, 11 changes on a Thursday night and then bring back the Premier League team on the weekend. He won't be able to do that next season. So they need to have greater depth, more competition for places. They've got it in some areas. I think some of the recruitment's been very good. I think someone like Trossard underlines that. But yeah, next season, he's going to have to be, stronger with his rotation. And City are the best at that because they've got the best squad. I mean, I can't think of anyone else who would have a player score a hat-trick at Wembley at the weekend and then bench him the next game. But City can do that because they're so strong. But Arsenal next season, that is going to be an element that they've got to try and manage the squad a bit better.
We were talking earlier on and wondering if there will be an opportunity in the summer in terms of the transfer. Like the Cronkies have invested massively at moments where it feels like the team are about to succeed in their American football team. If you fans of the Rams will know that they've splashed money, and there's a downside in American football in that you kind of have to pay that back at some point. Whereas in soccer, if you invest in the team and you get good young players, then you actually get to reap the benefits of that long term. So I wouldn't be surprised to see the Cronkies double down and think, this is a strong position and let's build strength on strength. So there's at least some reason to suspect or hope that they will be involved in big transfer dealings and a number of big signings this summer.
I think the Cronkies, since the past few years when they've sort of turned the club and their reputation around, we've seen that they have a willingness to spend money in the transfer market if the deals are right, and they backed Arteta quite heavily. And he is someone who does put pressure on the club both publicly and privately. We've seen in press conferences he talks about maximising every transfer window. I think he's only had one window when he's been at the club where they haven't signed someone. So I think Arsenal will be wanting to kick on from this. The spaces of the squad is there. It's very strong. And the fact, you say you've got those young players who will get better. But the argument that Arteta will make, when he's talking to the board and talking to Eddie, is they're now playing Champions League football. You need that bigger squad. You need more quality. And that's something they've got to address in summer.
How far behind City are Arsenal, Simon, in those terms? And we know the financial clout of City, of course, and the money that's behind them. Martin Keown, we were making the point earlier, he was saying on TV last night that he feels Arsenal are about 10 years behind Man City at the moment, which maybe is quite reactive to a result like last night, but you can't really argue. A lot of teams feel like they are a generation almost behind City.
Yeah, I think for 10 years is a long amount of time. I'd still think they're a few years behind City, and just because that squad depth, the strength that City have right through the squad, and Phil Foden being out for a month and it's barely talked about. Nathan Ake misses out last night, and in comes Kanji and does a brilliant job at left back. The way that they can cope with these injuries is so much better than anyone else. And Arsenal, I think when they've got their full 11 and everyone playing, and you'd include Saliba in that, I think they can match Man City and match basically any side. But the challenge is when they don't have everyone fit, which is going to happen across the course of the season, are they able to maintain their level? And that's what City can do better than anyone else. I think Arsenal, when you look at the squad, it's so young, it can get better, it can improve, but it needs a bit of additions, and it needs some time to try and catch City.
I know the Arsenal fans are like, we're building and it's been a great season, and this is us now, we're going to be contenders. But history is actually littered with teams who come up, have one of these seasons, and then don't actually get the opportunity ever to win the league title again. That's not saying that this team won't, but they will need significant investment. There's no guarantee that every signing they make pays off. It was right there for them if they'd won the 3 games that they drew from a 2-0 up at Liverpool. From that position to get to here, it's been like a fairly catastrophic swoon.
It's been really painful, I think, for the way these sort of 4 games have gone. They've taken 3 points. As I say, it's the manner of what's happened to get to the situation they're in. And when they look back over this run of games, I think they'll be disappointed with the City match, of course. But those games against West Ham and Southampton, I think the ones that they'll look at and realise, dropping those points, it stopped them coming to the Etihad with the cushion. It gave City the door was open for them. It gave them the chance to push. And I really think for Arsenal, as much as the title we feel like it has gone, they need to finish the season in a strong fashion with some wins, because, as you say, it has been a brilliant season, but for supporters, you can feel it sort of fizzling out, and I don't think they'll want that to seep into the summer and next season. They'll want to finish on a strong showing.
What did you make of Mikel Arteta's tactics last night, Simon? Because I was making the point earlier that, and Sean Wright-Phillips made a similar point on TV last night as well, where you can either go full press against City, you can sit back and let them at you, but Arsenal almost last night were in between. It was almost like they were unsure of what exactly to do and how to approach that press. But is that on Mikel Arteta? Did he get his tactics right or wrong last night?
I mean, I think he came to the Etihad to play the way that Arsenal have all season, as opposed to trying to nullify what City do. And they were getting pulled around so much. I mean, Holding and Gabriel, for a lot of the goals, the distance between them is crazy for two centre-backs, getting dragged up the pitch. And for me, I kind of feel like Arsenal needed to show City maybe a bit more respect, maybe drop a bit deeper, not try and press them so high. I can remember from that very first game of the season where we saw Haaland against West Ham racing through sort of 30-40 metres and realising, wow, this guy's pace is incredible, and if you give him that space, he'll cause you problems. And I feel too often they were letting Haaland get up ahead of steam, get at them, and yes, I said, played into City's hands. And when Arsenal look back at it, I wonder if that's something that they'll think, maybe we should have tried to drop deeper, try and make it harder for them. And even at half time, everyone could see it wasn't working, didn't really change it, and most of the substitutions again were sort of like for like. So I think that's something that some Arsenal fans will have criticism with Arteta, in-game sort of tactical tweaks. Is it there, as opposed to the changes being trying to keep plan A working better than it is?
Quick question about Katie McCabe. She was captain in the 2-2 draw at Wolfsburg in the first leg of the Champions League semi-final. They're dropping like flies in terms of the injuries that Arsenal have at the moment, so it's no gimme, no guarantee at all. It never is in the Champions League semi-final second leg, but her performance was so dynamic and suggests she probably will be captain for the rest of the season. Is that likely to be the case, do you think?
I think it could easily be the case. I mean, I remember being at the Bayern Munich game when she was walking off the pitch in a protective boot and crutches, and then somehow she's playing on the Sunday. So, yeah, quite ridiculous, her powers of recovery. But she is someone at the moment, that Arsenal squad are missing 4 definite starters for the rest of the season. And a lot of what they're playing on is sort of, spirit and energy and trying to keep going. And she sort of epitomises that more than anyone else. And she's a big person in that dressing room. For the second leg, they're going to have hopefully a sellout. The club are pretty hopeful about that. I think they're close to sort of 55,000 tickets. And the value of that will be absolutely massive for us. I don't think you can really underestimate what it will do for that team to have that big support. So, yeah, it's a difficult situation for them, but McKay playing a vital role for sure.
It's a really interesting turnaround from a bit where it looked like she was actually on the way out. Now, there was never a transfer request, at least that we know of. I don't know if the bid was formalised to a point where they had to really consider it, but it just goes to show you, when you stick your head down and keep playing football, anything can happen.
Massively, yeah. And I think it was Chelsea were the sort of biggest club that were interested in buying her. And when you have Chelsea trying to sign you, I think it shows you're doing something right. For Edeval, she's a really important player simply because of what she brings in the dressing room, we say, but also her versatility. We've seen her at left back. She was playing further up the pitch at times against Wolfsburg. That sort of player who can slot it in anywhere to a team is absolutely valuable. And I think from Arsenal's side, there was never a desire to let her go. And right now, I think we're seeing the sort of value of what she brings to that team.
Simon, good stuff. Thanks a million. Cheers for joining us.
Thanks, guys.
It's Simon Collings from the Evening Standard giving us his thoughts on the situation at Arsenal. 3 quick ones for you here. Noel Kyle says, at Shane, I asked you yesterday if O'Sullivan was playing well. You said yes. It was obvious he was not playing well despite his 10-6 lead. Owen O'Connor, Shane put the hex on O'Sullivan. Andy Jennings did a double on Galopin Deschamps and Ronnie O'Sullivan. Thanks, Shane, for your overconfidence. I just want one last thing on this before we go to you. They come back for the second half and the BT announcer's like, the Snooker, they've done a bit for the Snooker, you can watch it live on Discovery Plus. And she's like, well, there's no way that the drama at the Crucible could match what we're seeing full tonight. And I'm like, Like a 28-year-old Wunderkind who's never done anything in this has just won 7 frames in a row against a 7-time champion.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
And I love the way at the end of the snooker late last night, as Ger Shane won a dramatic decider against Anthony McGill. The reporters on Eurosport were like, well, the football doesn't matter. This is way more dramatic than the football. So they're obviously
some kind of beef
in their own little bubbles.
Shelbyville versus Springfield.
Sorry, people blaming. I was getting messages on Twitter as well for people me letting down their bets because I told them to maybe gamble. I didn't tell anyone to gamble. But Ronnie O'Sullivan, the 7-time world champion, is 10-6 ahead in a race to 13 frames against Luca Bracel. Ronnie had been playing okay. He was sick against Pang Zhongzhu in the first round, and he was still won 10-7. He was dominant against Hossein Vafai, match I was at the Crucible at the weekend, and yeah,
you came home. That's your fault.
Well, this is it. Maybe I met, as I said yesterday, fist bump Ronnie O'Sullivan. Maybe I did put the hex on him, but it's not really my fault. Leave me alone. But we've got 2 good semi-finals. We've got Irish interest, Ger, as well. Mark Allen plays Mark Selby in the semi-finals, and then we've got Ger Shane against the other side of the draw is Luca Bracel, of course, who beat Ronnie O'Sullivan. So 2 decent semi-finals.
Continuing the clanging name dropping that we've been doing all morning on the show ever since Nathan put up the picture of him meeting the Ted Lasso crew. You were chatting with Ronnie O'Sullivan, and he's going to be in studio in a couple of weeks.
He is. This is the breaking. We haven't told people this yet.
Hey,
but because a lot of people are messaging me going, "Where's the Ronnie interview from the weekend?" Yeah, Ronnie will be in studio in a couple of weeks' time, 2 or 3 weeks' time. So watch this space. He's got a new book coming out. So
you're burying the lead, though. He stopped and recognised you.
Yeah, he did. So I've spoken to Ronnie a couple of times, done a couple of really fun interviews, I have to say, with Ronnie, because people warned me. They were like, "Oh, he's not he's going to be a tough character to sit down with." But Ronnie was super pleasant, I have to say, on every occasion I've dealt with him. Yeah, he was hopping into the car outside the Crucible stage door the other day, and came back to give me a little fist bump and have a quick chat. So I was buzzing, obviously.
22 minutes past 8, OTB AM live every morning with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition is available now. We've got Vinny Perth in studio talking football next. Here's some David Meyler post-match with Nathan talking Jack Grealish.
Again, we all look like fools when we start to doubt these players and wonder, can he step up to Manchester City? Now it's hard to envisage a City team without him in it.
No, it's just I'm speechless with his transformation. Do you know, like what Pep has made him do out of possession. You know, like I've never seen Jack Grealish run 50, 60 yards back to put in a tackle, to put in a block. You're looking kind of going, like, you think this is Manchester City, but that's the standards that Pep sets for his players. Like even at Aston Villa, he didn't have to do that work. He had a free role. But now, like you said, Jack is so fantastic at receiving the ball into feet. When he's got pressure up his backside, he can deal with the ball. And again, time after time, he makes that decision to come inside or drop the shoulder and spin down the line, but he always keeps the ball, he keeps them ticking over. And look, like who would have thought the transformation of him and how well he's become? Like he's a key player in that team now. And like you look at, like they've still got Mahrez, Foden who don't start, but then Grealish, when he's putting in performances like that, he can't really afford to leave him out.
Yeah, that's David Meyler. You get that goodness on the OTB football feed wherever you get your podcasts. Post-match from him and Nathan last night. Now, Vinny Perth is with us. Vinny, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning. How are we all doing?
You were comparing your snooker record there with young Shane.
Yeah, I had a misspent youth in snooker clubs. There was a time where there was loads of them in Dublin now. You really struggle to find a snooker club unless you're an anorak. So actually we played an FAI Cup final in 2018, and Pat Hubin plays league snooker and that in Dundalk. So
that's a high level.
Yeah, so it'd be really good. But I played him the morning of the final we were staying in the Radisson, so that's Ken Doherty's practice room. Amazing room.
St Helens, yeah.
Memorabilia and all that stuff, just an amazing room. A lot of Manchester United stuff. But I remember myself and Pat played one frame and I beat him, and to say Stephen Kenny gave out to me when he found out, it was hilarious, and everyone was, you know, in the background chuckling away, and he was like proper giving out to me. What the did you do, David Cup final? You should have let him beat, you know. So it was good fun.
Put the hex on Hoban, yeah.
Yeah,
how did we play?
We still won the final, so forget how Pat played. That's not important.
It's irrelevant. Yeah.
And you know, Pat losing doesn't come kindly to him, you know.
All right, so you ruined his day.
Yeah,
totally.
Yeah.
Just one frame, but you'll take it.
It was just one frame. It wasn't a great frame either. And the championship pockets are so tight, like, so it was really difficult.
Different size, of course.
Different. Absolutely.
So what's your record break?
I broke 50 a couple of times, so 67 I wouldn't be shy about telling people, but
right. Not bad at all.
Yeah, but I gave it up. I honestly, I think my wife, you know, the butt of the queue, threw out the butt of the queue once, just threw it out like, and never ever really played again.
Is there more to that story that you want to tell us?
No, it's not a Tiger Woods moment, anything like it. And once that went, I just couldn't play. Picked up different cues and
this happened to Stephen Hendry. Like literally, it was the end of his career. It's mad.
So now my challenge is breaking 90 in golf. That's me new thing now. So obviously, as you get older, your priorities change. But breaking 90 in golf is now
right.
Yeah, now my challenge.
Are you close?
Yeah, about 93, 94. Recently, Damien Delaney would probably tell you I'm over 100, but no, I'm close to 93. Now, Damien Delaney is just ridiculous at golf, by the way.
Is he? Yeah,
ridiculous. Like
down to 3 or 4, is he?
He's one of them. You know, when you play with someone who's too good, it actually takes the enjoyment out of it.
Yeah,
he's down. I think he's playing off 1.
Is he already? Okay.
I'm going to play off these white tees back here, lads. I'll see you in a minute. Type of stuff. You know?
Yeah. Just rubbing it in.
Yeah,
it's annoying.
Shane, you've been curiously silent on your record break.
No, I'm not a great snooker player at all. Like I love playing it. Watch it. I'd say my highest break is maybe early 30s. Like I'm not a consistent player whatsoever. I do have my own cue, so I walk in with this case, take it out, assemble the cue together, and then
like
proceed to play crap. Yeah. So I'm all talk, I'm all show. But sure, listen, I'll get there someday. Someday I'll break 50, Vinny.
You were watching Liverpool last night before we talked to.
Yeah, I obviously watched both games, and sadly I watched Liverpool after the Arsenal City game. But Liverpool fans will, and I know you have a lot of them listening, they were exceptional last night. I know they've had a couple of different moments, obviously go back to Charity Shield or against Arsenal, but he started Diego Jota, who's been brilliant over the last few weeks, but it looked like it was his third game, sort of come back from injury, took him off. He brings on Luis Diaz, and he was exceptional as well when he came on.
Right.
Thiago came on, Nunes came on, and you're like, all of a sudden you're like, this is sort of
what you expected.
But it's also the rebuilding has begun. You can see in this Liverpool side there's obviously still a couple of things defensively. Jean Matip was very good at centre half, and we obviously seen Trent playing in midfield. We've seen a little bit of that, but I was chatting to someone big Liverpool fan, and he was like, well, they still gave away chances. They've always given away chances. They've like the fullbacks are always a little bit too far forward for most people, but they're so dominant as an attacking force. Gakpo has got a good goal from outside the box, but he's starting to find a bit of form, and I'd say there's real hope for this Liverpool team when you strip back all of the noise and that comes around, and the pylon that jumps on, and when you look at their run in, you know, it's a long shot because Newcastle and United have stole the march, but they've got a lot of winnable games. I think that's 5 on the bounce or something like that. So
because all I saw was the last few minutes where Moyes is storming onto the pitch and, you know, giving it about the penalty, and then you see the penalty and it's like, well, it didn't really look like a penalty.
Yeah, and I think, and I often find with David Moyes teams, and I've seen this when they were trying to break into Champions League against the top sides, I always feel he never goes for it. They didn't go for it last night. Liverpool were really dominant, particularly in the second half. Fabinho, Henderson, Curtis Jones played really well, and again, Curtis Jones, a good example of a player that hasn't looked good enough for Liverpool, but when the team are playing well, it's very easy to look good enough for Liverpool when you're just one cog in that wheel. But yeah, David Moyes went, as you could see, bananas over the penalty decision, but it was only the last couple of minutes where they really West Ham had a bit of a go. And again, it will mean a lot to Klopp. They went 1-0 down, came back and won 2-1. So that will feel important to him, and the manner in which they done it, as I said, they could have done it by a lot more. They were very, very good, and as I said, a lot of Liverpool listeners, I'd imagine, and a lot of them mightn't have seen the game, but there was a lot of really good stuff from Liverpool last night.
Alright, so not done yet. Let's talk about the League of Ireland Premier Division. Bows at the moment have a 5-point lead over Derry City. Shamrock Rovers are up to third now, which we kind of expected. They've turned it around in terms of results, and it looks like it could be pretty exciting.
Yeah, I think we're starting to see a bit of shape to the league when you look at in terms of position of people. There will obviously be a couple of teams, maybe like Dundalk, who could go either way for them, but you're starting to see sort of the shape in the league, as in the top 4. You'd expect it, probably not that way around, but the challenge now is this Bows team capable of winning the league? I think that's the real big questions for people. and that will be tested. And I think this weekend they've got ties where you could say, yeah, they could go and win them ties. So
it's another back-to-back weekend.
Back-to-back weekend, which are usually important for teams trying to win the league. I keep saying to you here that I think the performance of Rovers will be a bit like Man City. They'll come like a steam train and probably win it. But for Bohs, it's a huge opportunity. Sometimes in a season, every so often it comes that way. Like UCD away and Cork at home. I mean,
that's the bottom two.
Bottom two. And if they win both of them games, you're on 30 points after 13 games. That's exceptional start. That's league winning form, and you would think that they've got the finances in place to strengthen that squad and back the manager. And with Pat Fenlon working in the background, I'm sure he's already working on different players that they'll spot most likely from outside of the league. So do I think they'll do it? No, but stranger things have happened, and they've had an exceptional start. And you know, at that club there's been a huge sort of buzz off the pitch, but if you add what they're doing off the pitch and onto the pitch as well, it can be a really exciting time around Dalymount. And I think huge credit must go to Declan Devine, but also I think people and sometimes it gets lost in a bit of social media noise, but Keith Long has left them a lot of good young players coming through. A lot of people have made a lot of appearances, and to be fair, they've kicked on.
Are Bohs Arsenal in this scenario, or Shamrock Rovers Man City? I know you've been saying Rovers are coming, but can Bohs hold them out for a significant period of time at least to make it interesting?
Yeah, I suppose isn't that the challenge? I'm not sure. I honestly am unsure. I think they're probably. I feel like they're short of what needs to be done. But I'm mainly on defensive areas. But if they can strengthen that, as I said, get to the window with any sort of a lead, I think they'll have the finance to strengthen that. So the key for me is they haven't played well up in Drogheda, for example, the other day, and still won. And they've had a couple of results like that. And also the couple of games they've lost, they've went and backed them up with wins the following week. So they've showed a good, again, I hate that lazy word of mentality, but they have showed a good mentality. Young lads like whether it's McManus or Clark coming in and out of teams, swapping and changing them, and like we said pre-season, myself and Richie here, someone like Adam MacDonald has been huge for them, outstanding. But they've put pace in the team. Dylan Connolly, obviously a huge player for them. But there's something exciting happening down there. But I would say to you, they won't want me to use that analogy or for you to use it, but it does feel like there's a bit of Arsenal about them. But the difference is, when it comes to League of Ireland, is that this is a season they can definitely build on and be the ones to push Rovers if needs be.
You feel like there's enough youth in the Bohs squad that they could be around for a number of years. It's not like it's as we said earlier, a flash in the pan. This Bohs team should be around for a bit of time if they can keep the squad together.
Yeah, you would say by and large in League of Ireland nothing happens for years and years and years. It's because of the nature of it, but certainly there's a 2 or 3 year window with this team. And again, will some of the better players be picked off? They probably don't feel they need to sell as quickly or as they did, or do certain deals as they had to do. I mean, agents were looking for release clauses of 40 and 50 and 60,000, and you would feel that they're in such a good position now that they can offer a decent wage that can counteract that.
On that, the transfer stuff, like Jack Byrne staying put now after these MLS offers, but like as Stephen Bradley was saying, he now has the right to play down his contract and leave on a free. So I mean, obviously Rovers will be delighted that he's staying put, but is it the right move for him, do you think?
Well, for him personally, I think the MLS suits him. I think he could do really, really well over there. So for him personally, it's not the right move. But that's like tough, Jack. Get over it. That we pay you good money here at Shamrock Rovers, and that's life. So it's brilliant show of sort of strength by Shamrock Rovers. Tells you, I mean, you've got to remember, you're talking about winning anywhere from $1 million. Once you enter the Champions League, you're almost guaranteed $1 million. Okay, so winning the league this year guaranteeing $1 million, but also the opportunity to earn another $5-6 million between Europe and getting to a group stage. So for taking it, and I believe the fee is hefty, but taking a fee now would weaken the chance of earning 4, 5, 6 million. So they've just said no, we want to remain in the Champions League next year, we want to win the league, we're keeping our best player. I'm sure they'll offer him a new contract between now and then, but again, windows and different things. This was a good time from whether the window was open in the USA, come end of the season, etc. But it's a real great show of strength from Shamrock Rovers to say, no, we're keeping our best player.
He's still young enough where he could have a great season, and then whenever his contract is run down, he could cash in himself at that stage, and it could be a win-win, basically.
Yeah, you've got to remember. So, for example, if the club was willing to pay, we'll just use 100,000 to Shamrock Rovers, they might be willing to give Jack, for argument's sake, 30,000 if that is a sign-on fee.
Yeah,
it's all
percentage.
equatable. People can work out the percentage and figures themselves. But yeah, so that's why it suits players. You look at the Matt Doherty deal where he's basically free agent, and great. Cha-ching, thanks very much.
Yeah.
And that's the economics of football, and letting players' contracts run out. We had it at Dundalk for years. We've lost people like, Richie Tell when he was, huge star at the time. Darryl Horgan, Andy Boyle, people like that went for, and it's the Challenge League of Ireland clubs have always had. They're starting to see a lot more what they're calling multi-year contracts now.
Yeah, and that's the risk, but they're taking those risks now from at least a more financially secure base than they would have been back in the day when shells were drawn with that board.
It's football economics.
Yeah,
let's call it spade. That's what it is.
Yeah,
and some you win, some you lose.
The refereeing, obviously, we don't want to talk about it every week.
No,
but we end up talking a little bit about it every week.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because I think it happened to be Duffer side this week that was live on TV, and there's a couple of interesting decisions. The penalty decision, I think, was a penalty decision, and then there was an incident with Keith Ward and Shane Farrell for right in front of the referee where Keith Ward sort of pushes one player and the young player pushes him back around the head and he goes down on his head, and you're like, that's where Duffer's comments against the referee, you wonder, do some of them go against him, and is it time for him to go a little bit quiet now and maybe send out the assistant for a couple of interviews? But also just shows you the experience of older players. The Dundalk players played, the Shelbourne players, but then in fairness, Shelbourne won a penalty that was dubious as well, but again it was a little bit of experience in terms of Evan Caffrey got in front of Dundalk's defender. But then the big learner for me on it was there was an incident where Paddy Barrett went for a ball with the Shepherd, the Dundalk keeper, ball in front of Shepherd, the keeper. It's debatable. I don't think he had the two hands on the ball, but Barrett's studs are up kind of high, and you can see why the referee gives the decision. But the big learner for me was, and where you've got to be fair to referees, Shepherd was lying on the ground holding his head and got treatment for a head injury. Studs, nothing was near his head. So in all sports you've got to give referees a hand, and you've got to call out people and say, you can't go down holding your head and get like lying on the ground nearly in a neck brace and you're gone. So it's so difficult for people refereeing, but I think on that game, I'm not sure. I think the referee could have given Farrell sort of, for want of a better word, an orange card instead of a red one, and to dump. Now he did raise his hand and all that stuff, but Shelbourne got played a little bit, and that's the experience they've got to learn. And but it's a big learning point for us. We can slag off referees and go onto social media when they make a mistake, but when players are going to hold their head and get treatment, you've got to have a balance.
I think everybody is always obsessed with the thing that they're most interested in, and it turns out there's not a sport in the world where the referees aren't under constant scrutiny, and everybody goes, this is shite, we're the worst, these are the worst referees ever anywhere in our sport this particular week. And
well, you take the John Stones goal last night, I'm still convinced. I want to see a print out of that.
Well, I wouldn't mind seeing where the ball gets kicked.
I know that the boot sticks out on one angle.
Yeah,
but there's a different angle where the boot isn't sticking out.
It felt offside.
Yeah.
Like it felt like the and I don't know. I mean,
and again, it's to your point. It's you hear stuff around. Was that a penalty in GEA? Was it not? All this stuff. It's part of the game, but I'm not saying you shouldn't. Like, no coach is going to say, "Well, you feel contact, don't go down," because
no,
there is dark arts. but it's when players take them too far, they've got to be called out as well, and that's the balance.
Histrionics, yeah, that was always like part of our football culture. It wasn't the same as the continental European football culture, where it was like rolling round.
Yeah, but guess what? It is now.
Yeah, and which was best. I mean, you know, there was little aspects we could have taken from.
And there's some people who shout at me because and it's funny, the best teams always are accused of the dark arts. Like I was involved with a Dundalk team that people say we managed referees. Like
they
did.
Yeah, well, you had to. But the
Dubs do it. Yeah.
If you look at the numbers so far this season, Vinny, so you have 14 red cards in the League of Ireland so far. Eight of those straight red cards. Do you think there are diktats coming from on high from referees in terms of certain decisions or certain types of incidents that might lead to red cards, or is it just a coincidence?
I would say some of them red cards are just poor decisions by referees. Then I watched one game where there were 7 yellow cards and 1 red, and they were all justified. So it's how do you get the balance and all that? There's some bad decisions, but there's always been bad decisions. I just feel that, and I always say that on here is, we're comparing ourselves to the UK, where our yellow card count is over 5 on average per game. The UK is 3 something. But actually, no referee has confirmed it to me, or on or off the record. A referee's assessor, who I generally would see a lot of them now, the way I view games. I just think we referee to a European standard, and what I mean by that is there's just different UEFA rules around Europa League games, and all the refs want to get to that level.
Yeah, and that's no harm in the long term.
The refereeing slightly different,
and maybe the teams will see the benefit of that when they get to European football and they've been conditioned to behave differently.
Do you ever see that yellow card? And it's most frustrating for me is, you know, that one where that's your third foul.
Yeah.
So what?
Big deal. Like, I've had 3 fouls in 60 minutes. Like, that's going to happen. They're the ones that annoy me. I feel they've gone out of the English game. I don't think they're gone out, we'll call it European stroke Irish game.
Should persistent fouling not be...
Well, depend.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
people are going to cross each other. It's like...
Well, if you do, I guess it's intentional, right?
Yeah, but look, foul, like... I'm someone that used to make 10, 12 fouls a game when I played. It was a different game. You know, it was different.
It's a very GAA thing where you've done that foul 3 times, and I know you're doing it on purpose, and so I'm getting you for the third one, even though it's actually a minor foul. It's like...
Yeah.
Okay.
Consistency.
And that's the thing about refereeing. There's a lot of grey areas in terms of whether something is intentional or not intentional. A fella runs across you as you're running back.
Yeah.
Where did you want me to go? Type of stuff. And there's balance with all of them, you know.
Well, there was an interesting foul last night where De Bruyne. There's a foul on him, and he's like, it was 4 on 3, and they're like, oh, that's the third time. No, he was saying it was 4 on 3, which means it was a goal scoring opportunity. And you'd have to like, well, actually, you are Kevin De Bruyne, and that is Haaland, so it probably is a goal scoring opportunity, and therefore it could have been a red instead of a yellow. But anyway,
but the biggest scourge in our game at the moment in world football, I would say, is time wasting. So people criticise the World Cup for 12, 13 minutes, and I was loving it. Free kicks are taking 2 and 4 minutes. There's a new trend in football now where players are getting injured to allow tactical stuff. You're seeing it with goalkeepers, because people know if my goalkeeper goes down. I've seen it in League of Ireland games, and it's so obvious what's happening. And until someone deals with that, and the problem is, how do you say whether someone's injured? Goalkeeper goes down, we have to stop the game.
One of the things that I think about football that has an advantage over, say, for example, particularly GAA, is that you could have a load of professional referees who are contracted centrally by the FAI, and this brings us nicely to the other issue of the week, which is the Horse and Greyhound Fund, and a story that has been running, in fairness to the Irish Independent. There has been an independent review carried out by a firm, and it's apparently 70 pages long. I hope it'll be published, about how the distribution of that fund, which is topping up 1.4 billion in the last 20 years. And this is a story that we've covered since we launched in 2002. The Horse and Greyhound Fund get guaranteed in the statute books. It used to be 60 million, and now it's gone up every year, and it's split 80-20 in favour of racing versus greyhound racing. And the money was supposed to come from betting tax, but ultimately we've had to contribute from the Exchequer funding as well. The story came out, Eanna Reardon from the Labour Party raised it in the Dáil, and Leo Varadkar said, no, you can't pit these sports against each other. That's you're going about this all the wrong way. Colm used the word gaslighting about Varadkar's response to it, and It's interesting though, because they closed ranks. The Minister for Sport came out and said, "Oh, this is a matter for the Department of Finance, and we've given loads of money to the FAI." Basically, shut up.
Well, interesting, because like, imagine being able to get a panel of referees who, as you said, are full time. Or, I mean, there's so much good work on the FAI. For example, it's at the moment, and they need more funding for it. But at the moment, just one tiny example of there's a transition year. Every kid has now the option to go transition year in school. So the FAI run a brilliant course for the last number of years, a lot of really high profile players. So instead of having a transition year in school where you do home ec, or I know teachers will shout and say, no, it's a bit more than that, right? And you learn how to sew or whatever. Does it in Dublin now, the elite players are going to do the transition year based as footballers. So they're doing all the strength, working as full-time footballers. Brilliant tool by the FAI. It's run out of, I think it's Finglas, it could be Cabra, but it's a brilliant tool. And it's so hard to get onto it now because all the elite players want to do it. And their parents are willing to say, if I had a son who's any good at football, this is a massive opportunity. So, but the problem is, I think there should be more of them around the country. Yeah. We need a bit more funding and help.
It should be a pilot programme that has worked and now we roll it out. But
so all of them different ideas, and to come back to the main point, and I'm sure Dan will be in the studio at different stages. The problem, Dan's article is a brilliant Irish journalist who does it. The problem with Dan's article is, and the problem with the way we frame the argument is, that you get the answer that Leo Varadkar gives you yesterday, because you're pitching one sport against the other. And even though, and I'm not saying Dan, and he's very clear in his article that he's not trying to, and everyone will say, oh no, we shouldn't take away jobs away from horse racing, we shouldn't. The problem is, we're using it, we can use that as an example to say, look how good an industry can be if you actually fund it. So give us similar funding, even similar funding or half of that funding in football. But when you frame one against the other, then you get to sort of basically Varadkar said, because Aidan O'Riordan, I believe, is a big Pats fan, he basically said, just go away. And I imagine, and I know the FAI are in the background trying to develop communication lines with the government where they're showing them different things, and they probably aren't looking for this bit of noise at the moment that we are talking about. But we do need more funding. It's just by pitching this argument against it, I think actually mightn't help us. And I'm not saying that's right, that it doesn't help us, because did you hear Varadkar's answer yesterday? He basically said what I felt he would say is, no, they do a great job, they do this, and he's factually wrong about, as you can see, about the Deloitte report is basically saying you can't count people that working in betting shops as working in the industry. But we have to frame our argument as football people better, and that's why I do say things like, don't ask RTE to turn up and put them on top of a chipper van. We have to frame it right, and
it becomes partisan basically. You're splitting the two industries, and maybe, as you say, pitting them against each other, which isn't good for either.
Yeah, Ger's not. I don't think he's agreeing with me here.
I don't agree with you, right? Okay. And I'm also bleeding, so that's not a great. This isn't going to look great on telly. But I think that actually sometimes you just got to rattle the cages. I think that football deserves to stand on its own 2 feet, and I buy the central thesis of the argument that if we're going to take money off the gambling firms, then some of that should go to football in a proportionate way, which will be 20% of the fund. Now, I get your point that you have to live in the real world, and the politics of this are going to be very interesting to see. What does Sinn Féin think about this? Because they're the ones who are going to be in charge of the Department of Finance inside the next couple of years.
Where Varadkar needs to wake up and read the room and smell the coffee is that you take Tallaght for argument's sake. And I don't know about you, I think I'm at an age where I love election counts, whether it's USA, England or Ireland, right? Sit there all night. And so many seats, so many elections are decided on a couple of hundred votes here and there, okay, across the world. There's 7,000 people in Tallaght now every week.
Leo Varadkar got in the last count the last time himself,
right?
You know.
So if I was a politician in Tallaght, for argument's sake, I'd have a billboard on the side of the pitch of Shamrock Rovers Stadium.
Can I just say, I've been all around, all the Fianna Fáil politicians all have, in Dublin, all have, so I was in Castleknock, and I've been in, where's the other one out there in the Navan Road? Where's Paddy Andrews? What's his club? Anyway, somebody remind me. Yeah. There's local Fianna Fáil politician right there, so they know the game.
Yeah.
But that's the GAA, and they're in bed and embedded with that. And I just feel like football could do a little bit of find your people within the organisation and go, why aren't we getting the same money? If this money's coming from gambling and loads of people are betting on football, then give us some of that money. I think that's fair.
Dundalk, 4,500, 3,500 people. The loud seats are swing either way. You can Galway, Cork. I'm saying, if one politician does it, like there is people like Charlie O'Connor who hasn't run as a TD recently. You always see him in Tallow with his Rover stuff, and there's a bit of politics behind that. He fell out with the GAA lads because he was nice to the soccer lads, right? But the point I'm making is, we have to do it, and and I think the FAI are trying to do it. From what I'm hearing, and it's very quiet, they're trying to sort of come up the nice way.
I understand,
and they have to build trust within government, and people have to understand that. So again, by the way, Dan's article is a brilliant read, and it's fascinating, and it's obviously really good journalism. I'm just saying, I'm only trying to make the point is, we can't. It's like people come in and go, do you ever see those assholes who are in Dublin Airport every Saturday morning? What are you giving out about them for?
Yeah.
Like, stop.
Yeah.
Stop. Let's actually get them that they love Haaland or Ferguson and Hoban or Jack Bourne, whoever.
They're actually your people, you just haven't convinced them yet.
And so, I don't know, I'm just saying, a huge amount of money, we can be like be so good at this sport if we get funding, and the huge benefits. I've brought it up before. Think of the local guards and the FEI run a late night league in. I'm not going to mention the area. Crime will drop by 45% to 50% on the night they run the league, and they run it for 6 weeks windows. Sport and soccer can help society. Government need to see that, and they need to give us money to do it, not just at elite level, and then and help, like Soccer Sisters. Last Easter, the FEI had coaches everywhere. Soccer Sisters throughout Easter was brilliant, and the knock-on effect for that is women's football in this country will improve, and different bits and pieces.
Participation levels go up, the cost of health goes down, more people stay in education longer. There's like mad knock-on impact, and I'm not saying it should just be soccer, but I do think we do need to revisit the Horse and Greyhound Fund. The greyhound industry does not deserve the support that it gets from the Exchequer. It has not been able to stand on its own 2 feet. Its track record is not great when it comes to safety issues. They keep saying that they have fixed all those, and maybe we'll talk about that again some other time.
But is it okay to say football, man? That's their argument.
Yeah.
Let's have our own argument.
And you're right. You're right about getting your own house in order as well. It feels like one of the things stopping the house getting in order is that there's no political support, and the political support won't come unless. And
Varadkar's comments where yesterday I thought they were a little bit dismissive of soccer. Maybe Castleknock isn't a hotbed of soccer, and it's more GAA, but that's not good enough either to dismiss the argument that Aidan O'Riordan was making. League of Ireland, Irish Football, FEI deserve a bit more funding, and I hope the back channels are working.
Well, we'll come back to this for sure, because it's definitely really important. Vinny, good stuff. Thanks a million.
Very much.
It's 8:53 this morning. OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night edition is available now. We're going to be hosting a live UEFA Champions League roadshow in partnership with Just Eat. It's coming your way on the 3rd of May in the Mansion House in Dublin. Going to be joined by UEFA Champions League winners John O'Shea and Wes Brown, along with Arsenal legend Paul Merson. It's going to be a brilliant night's entertainment. This is an exclusive off-air event, and tickets are limited, so don't delay. Go to offtheball.com/events. We will see you on the night. Just Eat, the official food delivery partner of the UEFA Champions League. Colin, what's your favourite Champions League memory?
Nou Camp, 1999, 1-0 down, Bayern Munich. Mario Basler's 6-minute goal when Clive Tilsley said it's taken the deflection, but it actually went straight in. And what a game that was, and like the Teddy Sheringham and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer moment. Like, history would have completely changed forever and ever if the Bayern Munich defence cleared that ball sufficiently and then the shot wasn't hit back in, and then Sheringham finished it. But from there on, United added another Champions League in 2008. And I was looking, lads, because ahead of this roadshow next week, you have John O'Shea, you have Wes Brown, and you have Paul Merson. Now, I love, by the way, Paul Merson's autobiography. Buy it, read it, How Not to Be a Professional Footballer. But Wes Brown played in the 2008 Champions League final. The next time Manchester United won the Champions League, crossed the ball in for Cristiano Ronaldo. On his left foot.
Yeah.
And Brown was a brilliant right back that season for United when Gary Neville was injured. He did exceptionally well, sort of out of position. They used to say about Brown that he was the most naturally gifted defender in that generation.
Kenny Cunningham was full of praise of them last week.
Brilliant player.
Yeah.
And then there was no John O'Shea in the starting 11 that night in Moscow. He didn't even get onto the pitch. But the following year, 2009, John O'Shea did get onto the pitch. In fact, he started the game at right back instead of Wes Brown, who wasn't in the squad at all. That was the dire 2-0 defeat in Rome against Barcelona, where Alex Ferguson said the preparation for that game was all wrong, from the hotel to the food, everything. It was a disaster. I thought the disaster was the team selection, where Fergie picked a midfield 2 against the best midfield trio of the modern football's history. And the score, and the 3-1 followed then in 2011 in the same matchup, Champions League final, this time at Wembley, where neither O'Shea or Brown played. Same margin of defeat.
It's funny that when I spoke to Clive Tilsey before, that Basler free kick moment, he actually said he was thinking in his head, that was his first Champions League commentary game. He's thinking, 5 minutes left, 10 minutes left of the match. He's like, there's been one goal, Bayern are going to win 1-0 in a pretty dour game, and I've got the call wrong. Like, I literally said, deflected and in. And as you say, it didn't touch anyone going through the wall, straight past Schmeichel into the bottom right corner. And then, of course, the Schmeichel and Sheringham, the Sheringham and Solskjaer moments happen, and Tilsley's commentary just goes down in folklore. It's unbelievable how it just happened for him.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to hear the lads next week talk about it. Like, Brown would have been part of the squad at that stage, like just about getting in, and O'Shea would have been a very young player. Merson, I'm sure, was watching on from afar, as was everyone. But that is such a freak game, that match. Like, Bayern hit the woodwork twice after going 1-0 up. Mehmet Scholl and Jan
Carsten Janker as
Carsten
well.
Janker, sorry, not Jan Carter, Carsten Janker. And like, United were just completely dominated, missing Roy Keane and Paul Scholes that night. Like, David Beckham had to move inside the centre mid, which I'm sure contributed to him coming a runner up.
Yes, but Blomqvist started the game.
Blomqvist started right mid in place of Beckham, and then Giggs was in his usual position, and Nicky Butt was the other midfielder. But they were just thoroughly outplayed. Like, and the end of the game, it's just a freak of nature. And actually, Alex Ferguson, in that documentary that his son made a couple of years ago, talked about how when it was into injury time and they were still 1-0 down and they were getting a few corners, he was preparing what he was going to say to the players afterwards in defeat, saying, "I'm proud of you. You just didn't do it."
Yeah, I mean, go on.
I was just going to say, there are moments where you think as a child your father is God, essentially, and unbelievable. There was a moment when I was a kid for that 99 final. I remember 1-0 down, gutted as a young Manchester United fan, and my dad said just before the first corner for the Sheringham goal, Dad goes, "Don't worry, Shane, United always score." This is the 91st minute. And then, of course, Tilsley 5 seconds later says, "Can Manchester United score? They always score." So I was thinking, my dad said that before the commentator.
Hey,
this guy's magic.
There you go.
Yeah.
And then the rest is history.
Sheringham scored like 4 goals that season.
Yeah.
And then Solskjaer injured himself when he slid in celebration.
Yeah. He scored in the FA Cup final of Sheringham that season as well. Like,
right,
a couple of important goals.
Yeah, Newcastle. But well, I mean, like, obviously that's the final that everybody in generally our age group remembers. But like 08, 9 and 11, certainly now since then, because United have come absolutely nowhere near reaching the pinnacle of the Champions League. What a generation that was. Like, we probably didn't even appreciate it at the time.
I loved the AC Milan Juventus 03 final like nobody else did. You remember the Old Trafford one that went to penalties? That's one of my favourite Champions League finals, only because I was of a certain age where I remember just that AC Milan team, Shevchenko and all these lads, and Pirlo. I was just obsessed with them. I remember buying an AC Milan jersey.
Yeah.
So I just remember one of the worst Champions League finals of all time is actually one of my favourites.
Do you prefer a Saturday night final or the old Wednesday night final?
Saturday night.
Oh, the Wednesday nights are definitely the best from a historic perspective, but the Saturday night's much easier to get to.
Yeah. And have a few pints as well.
So the event is in the Mansion House on the 3rd of May. That's next week. It's going to be John O'Shea, Wes Brown and Paul Merson. I'm insisting that there will be some Aston Villa talk on the night. It's an exclusive off-air event. Tickets are limited. You can get them on Ticketmaster, or you can get them offtheball.com/events. Just Eat, the official food delivery partner of the UEFA Champions League. Right. If you want to get in touch with us, we'd love to hear from you. It's it's youtube.com/offtheball for the live stream, or you can also tweet us at OTBAM. Now, we're turning our attention to hurling, and it is going to be some weekend in the Munster Hurling Championship. I'm delighted to say Limerick legend Joe Quaid is with us. Joe, good morning to you. How are you?
All good, Joe.
How do you feel about how Limerick are going at the moment in the Championship as opposed to on the year to date? What's your assessment of where they are?
Look, I suppose every day that Limerick go out, there's a target on their back, the same as any champions. Every team is going to bring their A game. Every team is, I suppose, tried to devise a strategy now to beat them. A lot have tried. Some have got really, really close, but nobody has kind of figured it out yet. I suppose from a Limerick perspective, I would be happy in one sense that we got the win last weekend, but with the performance, I don't think they were as sharp. I think they were a bit sloppy at times, and we were very, very lucky to get over the line. But I think John Kiley alluded to that people were writing off Waterford. Waterford have been probably as consistent as Limerick without getting over the line over the last few years. They've been in All-Ireland semi-finals, finals. So they're not a bad team. So I wouldn't be hitting the panic buttons in Limerick yet.
I'm sure. I don't think anybody will. It's more that sloppiness. And Kiley afterwards, when he was talking about it, seemed genuinely angry. And maybe, look, some of that's performative and some of that is a message to his players. And it felt like he thought that maybe some of that complacency was seeping in. And you can be sure that leadership group are so experienced, they're also so talented, that they're not going to allow that to happen for a second week. So what do you want to see in terms of performance and sharpness and the absence of the sloppiness? How do you make that, how do you see that happen this week?
Look, that just happens because of lack of concentration. As you say, complacency kicks in. It kicked in at times. We weren't as sharp. We weren't delivering the ball as clean. We weren't breaking tackles the way we used to. No, a lot of it was down to Waterford and the challenge that they brought. But I suppose that challenge can only last for so long. Clare brought it last year. The one thing about this Limerick team is when they seem to be hitting a dip, whether it be after a game, they can recover massively for the next game, or whether it's during a game, they seem to be able to readjust. Like you take last weekend, they missed the penalty. I think within a minute or two, they were down to 14 men, but yet they reeled off the next 3 points. They've just done an unbelievable knack of managing their the on-field side of it themselves. But look, at any stage, any team can be beaten. It's why we love sport in general. You take the Meath ladies footballers, go back a few years ago, they were never even heard of. Then they go and do what they did. So there's no team out there invincible. We all thought Dublin would win 10 All-Irelands in a row. They were brought down. So look, I think John Kiley, it was probably a perfect storm for him last weekend in that there's 2 points on the board, but he has a massive stick to go back and beat the players with this week and work on, I suppose, the mental side of it. No one will ever question their work rate. No one will ever question, their fitness. But it's just the mental aspect of the game and how they prepare themselves, I suppose, for a titanic battle. Because while it's not absolutely necessary Clare win, I know teams have got through with 4 points before, but you lose your first 2 matches, you seem to be definitely behind the 8 ball. So I'm expecting Clare to bring an absolutely massive challenge the weekend.
Is there an ulterior motive, Joe, to those John Kiley comments? And I say that in respect to Limerick's success, and sometimes when a team almost becomes so successful, you have to find new ways of going back to the well and finding motivation each year at the start of the campaign. And there's a bit of a siege mentality because his comments here, listen, let's be honest about it, there was some amount of bullshit spoken about our team and the season ahead this week and the week before. Is that a siege mentality thing to get the motivation into the players' heads, do you reckon?
I don't think so. Look, we've all listened to John Kiley's interviews over the years, and there's no kind of I'm saying nothing about that, or Brian Cody type we'd like to congratulate the opposition. And that the one thing about John is he speaks from the heart. So I would trust John enough to think that's how he felt. Will that pass through to the players? Absolutely. Is he sending a message out to the players? Yes, by the interview, but I think they won't be left in any doubt when they met after the first night after training or in the dressing room after the match to their standards. Look, they set their own standards themselves, and their standards are ridiculously high. So I don't even think John will need to we'll need to say a whole pile to them. I often see him around Limerick. They'd be out having a coffee or that in pods and that. And to be honest, I'd say that would be a lot of the discussion between themselves even. Right, what went wrong? I think a lot of them would even do a bit of self-reflection and go, okay, what did I do wrong? What did I do well? What do I need to improve on and how do I need to do it? And look, they have I suppose in the background, they're probably Caroline Curran, that anybody that was feeling a bit left down by themselves in their performance, I'm sure she's at the end of the phone to offer a bit of guidance on, okay, that's gone, park it. How do we get better for next week?
Joe, talking to various people in the aftermath of the game as well, Waterford and Davy present a particular challenge that not many other counties are going to be able to replicate. So Clare won't be able to play exactly the same way that Waterford did, and nor should they. But it's not actually the worst thing for Limerick to have had the jeopardy that they had last weekend, to go down to 14 men, to have somebody offer them a different challenge when it comes to puck outs, basically man marking Barry Nash, so the short puck out was gone down that particular side, and when the long ones were there, that there was a massive competition for it. So basically Limerick didn't have it all their own way and had to think their way through it. A little bit fortunate, a little bit unfortunate. I'm either with the sending off, if you think that way, or the fact that Garrod Hegarty's first yellow was for Mountain, and the fact that they missed a penalty, which isn't going to happen again. So all in all, it's not the worst situation for them to be in, where they've had to think their way through, come through that, and there'll be a little bit of confidence heading into next week.
Absolutely. As I said, just probably the perfect storm facing into the Clare match. I think, bar a couple of players, I don't think anyone can turn around and say, yeah, that was my best performance. Look, sport, it turns. No one knows better than me. A 5-minute spell in a game can change a lifetime, not to mind a game. But like, if that penalty had gone in, then the melee probably wouldn't have started. The sending off wouldn't have happened. We would have probably pushed on. It's all ifs and buts.
Yeah.
You deal with what's there on the day, and I suppose that's probably their biggest strength, is their ability to adapt. I suppose everyone said when the water breaks were there that they went out like machines. They played for 17 minutes. They came back in. Paul Canuck reprogrammed them and they went back out again. This is proof that they do it themselves. That they're self-regulating. They're able to adapt to different situations. Like, yeah, they kept Barry Nash quiet from the puck outs, but yet after going down to 14 men, there's our cornerback above putting the ball over the bar.
Great score as well, yeah. Come here, what about Declan Hannon's injury? Like, of all of the players, he's got a specific role, and I'm sure somebody else will be able to do a version of it, but he's not one of the players that you're like, oh, there's competition for places there. It's like, he's got a role. He's like, genuinely the best at it in the country. And is there an obvious way to fix that?
Unless we clone him. I think he is just the best at what he does. I suppose if you could ask somebody, what does Declan Hannon do, it's very hard to put your finger on it, but he is so integral. Like, you could watch a match there, George, for 40-50 minutes, and all of a sudden the opposition are coming back into the game. You might not have seen Declan Hannon in the game early, and all of a sudden then he intercepts a pass, or there's a ball to be won, he pops up the field, throws it over the bar. It's worth 3 points. So can he be replaced? No, but we're very, very lucky in that I suppose that back line is so flexible. Like, Declan Hannon, our captain, our leader, came off. Dan Morrissey moved out, and we bring on an all-star fullback. It's riches that we have. Will the team be better with Declan in it? Absolutely. Come here, I was in the Gaelic grounds last year after 15 minutes and Keane Lynch went off, and we thought, oh my God, this is disaster. Holiday are gone. Missing Peter Casey already. They do what they did best, George. They adapted. And I think everybody has a huge understanding of every role that everybody plays. And if somebody needs a dig out, I think they won't be found wanting, if Dan is under pressure there, which I don't think he will be. Will he play the same game as Hannon? No. I don't know anybody in the country that can play the same game as Hannon. He's just gifted.
Joe, I was curious to get your thoughts as well on the incident involving Gearóid Hegarty and the member of the Waterford backroom team, who it seems is going to get a lengthy suspension for that incident. I know at the GA Congress in February they brought in this 8-week ban for any physical interference by a team official towards a player. This might be a more lengthy ban. We'll wait and see. But what were your thoughts on that particular incident?
Look, I suppose tensions were high. I'm sure that man after the match, well, he didn't seem after the incident to be upset by it, but I'm sure he will after the match. My attitude is you're out on the sideline. We've all seen Davy and Liam Sheedy and everybody, and John Kiley probably, pumping up to opposition players and management and things. But this man came from within the dugout. Now, I see a lot of, and I'll use John Kiley's thing, bullshit on media, on social media. Oh, Hegarty wasn't shot. It's irrelevant. He came over, he interfered with a player. Irrelevant of the force of it.
Yeah,
it's
totally.
It's the action that to me is completely wrong. He deserves a lengthy ban out of it. Probably didn't help himself by the way he was smirking coming off the field. When he was put off, probably lost a lot of support for himself, because we all know when passions are raised and that. I suppose you'd have got serious odds in the bookie that if there was someone to be sent from the field for an altercation with a Limerick player, that it wouldn't have been Davy. I thought he was unbelievably composed.
He was, wasn't he?
Last weekend,
I think it surprised a lot of people as well with just how flexible the tactics were and how he got most of those big decisions right. And if his team had just had a little bit more composure coming down the stretch, then maybe we'd be talking about this in a totally different way. We'll see what happens this weekend. Joe, great to have you with us. Thanks a million.
No bother, lads. Thanks a million.
Joe Quaid there, Limerick legend, giving us his thoughts on how the situation is unfolding at the moment in the Munster Hurling Championship. More hurling, of course, across the evening and on the show.
We're getting a few comments on your Opal retro Opal top. People curious as to where you might have purchased said top, Ger.
An Instagram ad. I'm a hooer for the Instagram, and I just can't
They know how to get you, don't they?
I've got no willpower.
Yeah.
Click. Yeah, I'll buy this. It's a size too big. I look like Neville Southall in the 1985 FA Cup final.
It works.
But there's a yellow one coming, and if the yellow one had been in stock, I would have bought about 12 of them.
Yeah, that's fair. You were curious at the start of the show to give a little bit of praise to Conor Laverty, which I think
Conor Laverty, the Messiah.
Yeah.
Like, Jesus Christ.
He was on the Monaghan backroom a couple of years ago, and I was like, this guy knows what he's at. But then he goes, of course, to his native down, which you can't blame him for.
So he's managing the under-20s and the senior team, and he was unbelievably eloquent after the under-20s last night. There's an interview on TG4, you can see it on their social media. They beat Derry in the Ulster football final, and then obviously they're playing this weekend against Armagh. So the 4 or 5 squad members in the under-20s who would be playing, only one of them was going to start, he said. He let the players decide what they wanted to do, potentially play their last ever under-20s game, or line out for the senior team. But the fact that he is involved with both of them, and also just the style of football that they're playing, the quality of football they're playing from the absolute depths that they were in previous to this.
Yeah, 100%. And he's brought the Kilcoo boys back in. That's one of the main things that Laverty has done. 100%, which is enough, I guess. But the other thing as well, and I saw Conor Laverty in action. He was at Ogie Duffy's funeral last year. He was manager of the Down Under 20s team, and he led that team so eloquently in everything they did. Like he was just he's shown leadership on and off the pitch. That's one thing I would say about Conor Laverty, the man as well.
Yeah, mid-30s already, one of the best and most important managers in the country. So there's a good crop of young managers coming through. Right, here's some highlights from the OTB Podcast Network today. David Meyler live from the Etihad last night. The Hurling Pod with Skell and Murphy and Will. Ex-England captain Sarah Hunter and ex-Scotland wing Megan Gaffney were with Kathleen on Ireland's 2013 Six Nations Grand Slam. You can follow Off the Ball across social and subscribe to the OTB Podcast Network. After the ads, Robert Higgins and Patrick McGivney are both in studio to talk about their brilliant new Irish film Lakelands.
You're listening
to OTB AM. Off the Ball Daily.
A home for your favourite podcasts from Off the Ball. The performance rankings, You Had to Be There, the crappy quiz, and a slight tangent.
Ireland against Scotland in World Cup B in Chile. The World Plate. World Cup B is growing on me. As a name.
Subscribe to the Off the Ball Daily podcast feed right now.
If that was me now, if I was following the goals this week, I wouldn't look at the game at all today. Tomorrow morning, I would just look at the goals analyse what I could do better, and then move on. Just move on. You know what I mean? I wouldn't even focus on the goals this week. I would focus on getting, the mind sharp again, sharpness, and just keep things rocking. You know what I mean?
It's very tough, right? Look, you're at inter-county level for aiming foodie. Like, I mean, you're at inter-county level. You make mistakes, it's going to be highlighted. You just have to accept that. And lads go, what do you do? How do you bounce back from it? Like, when I had, let's say, my day that was for, like, let's say Eamon Foodie's day today where he didn't have a good day, it's no panic. Like, there's no one dead. You'll go on the next day. And he's obviously was picked because he's been doing really well in training. He just has to remember that what the performance may be, the few mistakes I made today, I'm in the goal. When I make mistakes, they're punished. Corner forward makes mistakes, a lad just comes out with the ball. In 2009, I started midfield for Kilkenny against Dublin. I was flying it in training. And I ended up marking Alan McCrabb that day inside Nolan Park. He ended up winning an All-Star that year, but I came out completely flat. Didn't hurl well at all. I think I poked one ball, and I was dropped from Kilkenny for that year. And like the learning curve for me there, 2009, the learning curve for me there was that I just basically went, like, that's not me. That's not the player I am. Like, my opportunity was given to me. I didn't take it. Right, I'm going back at this again. And I think Eamon Foodie will just go, look, that's not the player I am. I made 2 mistakes. I got punished, 2 or 3 mistakes. I got punished. This is championship hurling. You can expect that. Go back into training. And like, as a goalkeeping, let's say squad or cell or whatever you want to call them, himself and Eva Quilligan, the lads will go at it and say, look, that's just the joys of it. When we reset and we go at it again and we have a bit of competition. But like, it's just the nature of it. I hate to say it, but like a goalkeeper and a full back line, you make mistakes, you're punished, and you think it's the centre of the world, and you think, you'll never recover from that. You will, and it's just the nature of it. And you know what? You come back stronger from it, if anything. If you take it on board and come back, you'll come back stronger from it.
Yeah, sure. It's character building, isn't it?
Completely.
Like, like people always say, he has to get his confidence back up. Confidence comes in a while, but he has to be courageous now. Yeah. He has to go after it this week and accept that what happened today and move on and keep the courage, keep going after it, and just focus on the first ball. If he's picked, focus on the first ball on Saturday.
OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
Right, I don't know if this is technically GA or not, but I'm delighted to say we have the writers, directors and producers of a new movie called Lakelands, Robert Higgins and Patrick McGivney with us in studio. How you doing, folks?
Thanks for having us, Ger.
Did you make a sports movie? Is this a sports movie?
Yeah, we were always keen to make a sports film. Yeah, we grew up playing football, and we always thought it was a rich area to make a bit of a film about and explore the culture around it. Yeah, 100%.
What are the criteria for sports movies? I'm not sure. Does it? We're watching it. The premiere was last night, and it's in cinemas now.
5th of May.
5th of May. Yeah. Okay, so we can build up a bit of anticipation for it. But I think this is going to play well in America with the whole concussion subplot, like where, I mean, you think people know about concussion, but it turns out they don't, and that's not to give anything away here, but it's an essential part of the movie. So,
sure.
Why did you make concussion the injury as opposed to anything else that it could have been?
Yeah, no, I think for us it was a very interesting, I suppose, jumping off point to explore other issues, and I think the fact that it's an injury that's not visible, you can't see it. I think that was interesting to us, and I think once we started doing a bit of a deep dive into it, we started having conversations with GA players who had suffered concussion. We had a couple of conversations with Laurie Ryan, who plays for Clare Ladies and Athlone Town, and once you actually begin to realise, the type of symptoms they suffer and how, I suppose, underrepresented it is to an extent, we just felt that it was an interesting issue that deserved showcasing.
Do you go into the writing process deciding that you want to tell a story about an injury to a footballer? How do you build this kind of jigsaw of information that we get from the characters?
Yeah, I suppose we started just wanting to explore the culture firstly, and then we grew up in it, and we always felt it was just strange that it hadn't kind of been represented more, I think, in the Irish cinema, considering how
Gaelic football in particular.
Yeah, considering how big a part it is of Irish kind of identity. So we were kind of it started from there, and then we kind of used a lot of our own kind of personal experiences growing up and kind of filtered that in. And I suppose a big interesting part for us was how much identity can get wrapped up in playing the sport, especially in a small town.
Yeah.
So we kind of started looking at maybe a character who he has to deal with that being taken away and kind of delving into that and coming at it from that angle, and then using that as a jumping off point to kind of examine the niches and the little smaller parts of the culture.
This isn't your first spin at this. People who I think you can still see on the RTE player, people might be familiar with your short movie called Drifting.
Exactly, yeah.
You got Paul Mescal before or after he started to become world famous?
Just before he blew up. Yeah, he came from the normal people set straight down to Longford. So.
Right. So he was used to filming the Gaelic football bits.
He did, yeah. I think that was one of the reasons he was attracted to the script. He'd obviously a GA player himself, and I think he was excited by the opportunity to depict that world in a small way. And for us, it gave us a lot of confidence. You know, it was the first time we were out on a GA pitch with a camera, and I think it gave us a lot of confidence that we were able to capture that world with a bit of authenticity, and it turned out to be a bit of a proof of concept for.
I was going to say, because a lot of the themes they're just longer, written larger. And more
we kind of jump back in with the characters when they're a little bit older, and for us that's a little bit more interesting when you've had your potential and you're kind of a bit of a fading star, and it's just an interesting point to jump back into the story.
Yeah, you're from Granard.
Yeah.
So this is a home set on home turf.
It is indeed, yeah. Like we wouldn't have been able to make it without the help of the local club, and we definitely called in a lot of favours. I'd been playing for senior football for about 12 years, so I had a lot of favours to call in. So the boys came out to support.
That obsession with GA, especially in rural areas, is pertinent, and it's so obvious in the film as well. And it's ironic because lads want to batter lads a mile down the road more than a team maybe 20 or 30 miles down the road. It's so parochial and local, but you get the sense from the film as well how significant that is.
Yeah, no, 100%. Look, the GA it's the lifeblood of so many communities, and it gives people that sense of pride, and sometimes that does boil over into unwarranted rivalries and all that, but I think we were just really keen to just capture that world with a bit of authenticity, and for us, like, the acid test is and will be GA players watching and saying, yeah, that's what a dressing down from your coach sounds like, that's what a training session feels like, and we just seen it as a massive opportunity to capture the world for the first time on cinema on film.
Would you call it coming of age, or is it's not necessarily coming of age because the character is clearly beyond the teenage years or whatever, but it's certainly coming of something.
Yeah, he's probably suffering from delayed adolescence, our main character, so I suppose it is a coming of age, even though he is touching his late 20s, but yeah, no, I probably would call it a coming of age story.
The players in the GA scenes, are they your teammates from, or are they all actors? Is it
they're a lot of the boys now we would have grown up playing with and that, and it came to the cold evening in November, they were getting a few phone calls and let's come out and do a run around with us.
Convincing them to actually act, right? Because it's not, the crisis of masculinity is the centre of this whole thing here, and you're like, no, it's fine, you just have to pretend to be the thing you do all the time, and they're like, yeah. Just be yourself.
It was funny because
what is myself?
Yeah, exactly. Well, look, there was actually a bit of rivalry going in that training session that we had. It was a bit of a game, and I think they forgot there was a camera there. There was a few big digs going in. They heard an actor was coming down from Cork, so they were like, right, let's hop into him.
It was easily done then. You almost don't have to force it. It's funny because that masculinity word that you mentioned, Ger, like it's a relationship with his father as well, which is complicated, and probably more so for a lot of people in rural areas as well, that it's all unspoken. There's no I love yous and that sort of thing. That's very much a sense with this relationship between the character and his father.
Yeah, we started off with Keane, that he has a big kind of shell up. The lead character is called Keane, and he kind of has just this shell of, he's a good football player, and he's well known around town with the lads and everything like that. So we just started kind of looking at what, like, when you chip away at that a little bit, and he kind of looks at opening up a little bit more as the kind of the film goes on. Yeah.
And how difficult it is for him to do that.
Yeah, for sure, and I think when you watch the film, you'll see, like, he's got different versions of himself. He's the version he is with his teammates, with his friends, and then with his dad, of course. And his dad is there for him and does care for him, but just doesn't necessarily have the language to
verbalise it. Yeah,
to verbalise it exactly. And it's still, you know, he's still doing everything he can, and like I think we just wanted to portray that relationship in a way that felt real to us, and not just have, you know, the stereotypical Irish alpha who's very cold and doesn't care. Like, he does care, he just can't say it, he can't verbalise it.
But the impact of him not being able to verbalise it is that Cian is not able to verbalise either the really important things where he's just pretending that he's grand going to training because he can't talk about the fact that he's not grand.
Yeah, it's definitely a kind of a cycle that's ongoing.
Yeah.
And I suppose, it's kind of his journey into breaking that cycle that's probably been kind of passed on, ongoing.
Yeah, and then we've got the character of Grace, Danielle Gallagher. She comes back from England, and she's the first one to kind of chip away at that shell and make him realise that there's a big world out there outside of club football and the Midlands and Granard.
Yeah. And the farm. Although I'm not sure, does he know this at the end? I mean, obviously it's up for everybody to make their own mind up, but
it's up for debate, you know. Check out Lakelands May 5th and tell us what you think.
I think I'm not doing any spoilers here, but it's just like it's this incredible slice of, you see the substrata of Irish life and the depths that exist there, while at the same time our complete unwillingness as a race of people to tell anybody how we feel or what we actually think.
Like for us, I suppose it was just the biggest goal was to achieve that, just that slice of life where it just feels authentic. And I suppose there hasn't been too many films shot down our way in Longford either, so just to show that little corner and how life looks down there.
Well, can we talk about Granard? Because like Granard, just
go for it.
Shane's talking about driving through it. Like for my generation,
no offence, I did drive through it when I was younger, but it's still a lovely little spot.
I'd never heard anybody describe it as a lovely little spot before Shane did it here. Like, because obviously it's famous in Irish culture for Anne Lovett, and like you guys must have grown up with that as like the thing that everybody knows about us. And now you're making a movie about football and about life. There, it's just like it's a character. You know, it's beautifully shot and it's incredibly captured. And even the name of the Lakelands and the eponymous lake, like, it's stunning.
Yeah,
that was kind of shocking to me. Like, you know.
That's good to hear. But I suppose for us, we wanted to just shine a positive light on Granard and the Midlands, but while not shying away from the issues it currently faces, and just to hold the mirror up and depict it in an authentic way, but also a way that's positive, because we see it through a very positive lens. We're very proud to be from Granard. We love Longford. We don't feel we get a fair shake all the time, but I suppose we just wanted to make something that Longford people and people from the Midlands could watch and be proud of. You know?
Yeah, I think you can argue though that like the crisis of the film is actually, you know, a natural. It's on the same spectrum as the place and the traumatic incident that happened in Irish cultural life. Like, I don't know if you've seen the Pray for Us Sinners that's out at the moment, the documentary about Navan.
I've been reading about it, Sinead O'Shea's film.
It's absolutely amazing, and the Anne Lovett thing features in that as well. The night the story breaks on the Late Late Show, Gay Byrne reads the headline and kind of just dismisses it.
Yeah.
So, like, you know, I'm not saying that you guys had this kind of perpetually in the background here, but like, I would argue that they're all part of, these movies are all part of the same kind of our inability as a country to deal with trauma. And everybody, they're doing it through football, they're doing it through farming, they're doing it through drinking, they're doing it through drugs. Do you know what I mean?
They definitely form a kind of an interesting network when you look at them side by side.
Yeah.
Different ways it's kind of been processed, for sure.
Yeah, 100%. And like even Cian in our story, like he is dealing with trauma and can't articulate, and I think that's symptomatic of what it is to be Irish, unfortunately.
Is Simon Crowe did the cinematography?
He did indeed,
like how, obviously you have to utilise that to kind of not to get all third level English on it, but like to highlight the loneliness of the character as well. It's almost like a Banshees of Inisherin thing, where you use the environment around you, whether it's the Aran Islands or wherever, or Granard, and you use that to depict how lonely this character is, albeit, as you say, he has the character Grace around him and this tetchy relationship with his dad, but certainly the cinematography plays into all of that.
Yeah, big time. Yeah, like we really wanted to capture those kind of wide landscapes and kind of emphasise, it can be quite beautiful, but also quite empty and quite lonely at the same time.
Yeah.
So that was a big thing we were kind of flagged at, and we were lucky to have Simon on
he's a beast. He's a 6'3" ape of a man, and like he just threw the camera on, and in the middle of those training sessions just got right into the action, and that helped us and allowed us to, I suppose, capture it with authenticity. And he knows our farm down home better than we do at this point. He's been down so much, and he's shot every inch of it, but he's a talented boy.
You were shooting during COVID too, am I right in saying that there's challenges been brought there as well? Like
it was like walking a tightrope at times, but we were able to shoot it in between lockdowns. We probably shouldn't have went to the pub after the first few days of shooting, but the whole town came in. But look, we were lucky enough to keep the COVID out, and I suppose we'd been deprived of being on set for so long. It was just to be back shooting was incredible, and you really appreciate it when it's been taken away for a bit.
How do you divide the responsibilities? Like, who's shouting action? Who's like?
We've kind of just figured it out. We're kind of lucky that we grew up together. We're childhood friends, so you can't fall out too badly with your childhood friend. You know, you can. So we just kind of trial and error, but we kind of just split it evenly. And communication, try not to step on each other's toes too much.
Yeah, we haven't cut off any digits yet.
And when you're actually writing stuff, do one of you take responsibility for dialogue? One of you take responsibility for like blocking scenes? How does that work? Because
it's kind of, we kind of would split it. Kind of, we kind of find it quite useful actually. We kind of get two bites at the cherry. You're nearly having two drafts at everything, two opinions, and you can confirm things quickly.
We definitely have similar reference points. You know, we know the same kind of mad local characters, so we can say, he's a bit of this guy, he's a bit of that guy, and I think just having that same kind of life experience kind of helps you to move a little bit quicker through scenes.
Was it all planned to a T, or were there certain scenes, even with as you say, characters from the town that cropped up that you're like, geez, that's actually really, really good, we'll leave that in, or we'll adopt that a little bit? Was it all kind of planned to the nth degree, or was it a little bit flexible?
There was a good bit of flexibility. You kind of have to be live to it. For example, I think you've probably seen the calving scene in the film. That wasn't actually planned at all.
That's a real calf.
I was going to say, I mean, it looks like
it's CGI there now.
It was shot on his dad's farm, and Porrick just came running up the yard. He's like, grab the cameras.
There's one about to pop, but we were shooting in the middle of calving season, so you're like, it would be amazing if we got it, because obviously we were working off a smaller than normal budget, and that's just incredible production value. But he came storming in and grabbed the camera, grabbed Dana, threw him into the mix, and then I had about 45 seconds tutorial on how to calve a cow, and the calf survived. So
I was going to say, no animals were actually hurt. But he's actually getting his hands in there. That's him doing the right. That's
and the calf was unresponsive for the first few minutes.
I was going to say,
So my dad was there doing kind of charades behind the cameras, saying, give him the kiss of life. But,
right.
I'm in
a moment of high tension
for sure. It kind of set the tone then for the rest of the set, because everyone was like, okay, this is a bit mad,
if he can do that then no, fair enough. So the movie actually premiered, I think, in 2022 at Galway, is that right?
Galway to fly.
So you've had 5 or 6 months to decide what you're doing next. What are you doing next?
So we're back to the drawing board at the moment. We're developing a new film with Screen Ireland at the moment, called Bonfires. That's set in Longford again, so we're hopefully sticking around for another next film in Longford as well, and then we're kind of developing some stuff in the UK as well at the moment.
We're not done with Grandeur just yet.
Well, that's fair enough.
I was going to say, sure, Vince Gilligan and Breaking Bad led to New Mexico being used as a filming mecca, so maybe Longford is the mecca of Ireland now after all this.
It looks beautiful. It really does look beautiful. I do think the concussion thing in America, though, it's like we can't talk about this, we can't see it. I think there's a good opportunity for the American sports writers to get behind a movie like this, because it's not the same as the concussion movie and all that kind of stuff. This is a completely different but very obvious high school sports equivalent.
We were screening over in America actually at the Santa Barbara Film Festival when a lot of this stuff was just really peaking in the news. So we were getting a lot of people coming up with parallel stories, and a lot of people playing American football and stuff like that who were saying they'd kind of had parallel experiences. So hopefully it has a little bit of a life over there, maybe.
For sure.
So it's opening on May 5th?
Yes, indeed.
Well, we wish you the very best of luck with it. Robert Higgins and Patrick McGivney. You played senior for Granard. Did you?
I played just up until senior.
You saw sense early.
Get out of there, yeah.
Do you? Is it a love-hate relationship you have with GAA?
Yeah, I'd say so. I think most club players have a similar perspective. Yeah, like, look, I love it. I love my club. You grow up in it, you know. But
that's the thing. The movie is the but, right?
Yeah. Like, as I said, like, we just wanted to show it, you know, in all its glory and not shy away from the more challenging aspects of it. I suppose GAA, you know, there's an obsessive element to it just by its very nature, having to train 4 or 5 times a week.
Drinking bands and all the
Drinking
rest.
bands,
Yeah.
give up, you know, your summers, like...
The claustrophobia of...
Yeah, and like it comes with a lot of sacrifice. You have to give a lot of yourself to it, and, you know, it affects people around you, girlfriends, boyfriends, you know, that can't obviously... you know, they have to give up, you know, access to you, I suppose, for periods of time during the season, and
so that you can go and be abused by a middle-aged man living out his fantasies.
Yeah.
Vicariously.
That's great, yeah.
yeah. But look, we're very passionate about it too. We love it, but we just wanted to show it in all its glory.
All right. Well, listen, you did a great job. Well done, lads. Robert Higgins and Patrick McGivney, thanks very much for joining us in studio this morning. Go see it from May 5th. On tomorrow's show, Adrian and Shane going to be joined by Jasmine Baba, Anna Kaplis, Alan Quinlan, Gilly Flaherty, Jess Kelly's VR experience. This time Shane is in space, and plenty more besides. Right now, the best of David Meyler with Nathan at the Etihad post-match last night. Have a tremendous Thursday. Good luck.
So what a performance from Manchester City. It felt like a title-winning performance. They'd beaten Arsenal 4-1. David Meyler was alongside me on co-commentary. How good was that?
It was really good. Man City were very impressive. Look, we know they're a very good team, but overall I was very disappointed with Arsenal. There was a lack of fight, a lack of hunger, which is something look, I know they've had disappointing results in the last few games, but certainly I expect to see a lot more from them. I always thought Manchester City would win the game being at home, but I expected it to be a lot closer, and City dominated from start to finish, and it could have quite easily have been 6 or 7.
What could Arteta have done to stop that? Because we've seen City at home this season against United, against Liverpool, go after them right from the start. The attacking players, Haaland, De Bruyne, pressing high, winning the ball back deep as well when they had to. We saw that today as well. Arteta had to be ready for City to come all guns blazing this evening, but it felt like they weren't. It felt like they were flat, and they were almost letting Manchester City come at them.
Yeah, they were. And when you look at a game like that, when you come away to the big grounds, and certainly you're a big team. Now, obviously the previous results would have knocked a little bit of confidence out of Arsenal, but there was just that lack of quality when they were on the ball. Their midfielders didn't get on it enough. You know, we've highlighted all season how good Saka, Odegaard, Martinelli have been, but they couldn't get them on the ball. And then when they did get on the ball, they were either too deep, or they took the safe option, turned back and just tried to keep the ball. You know, we spoke at the top about Akanji playing left back. Can Saka get at him? Can you get him running? Isolate him in wide areas? I think we've seen on 1 or 2 occasions him getting at the ball and trying to go at him, but over the course, what's he play, 75 minutes? It's not enough. You know, Reece Nelson, Trossard came on, and they looked to try and inject a bit of life and a bit of energy into it. That Arsenal performance was so flat, and I think any Arsenal fan who's travelled all the way to this game would be just disappointed with the lack of fight in them. You know it's going to be difficult because Manchester City are going to keep the ball, but you've got to get into their faces, you've got to get at them, you've got to try and disrupt their build-up. You know, when City are going to keep the ball, but they almost showed them far too much respect, and that's the big frustration I have, and I imagine a lot of Arsenal fans will have.
Arsenal did come into this with one injury, William Saliba, which seems to have totally unsettled the entire side. Rob Holding got a goal, but had a bit of a nightmare evening, and there were worries before the game as to how he'd handle Haaland, and he tried to get right up close and be physical with him, and you're never going to win that battle. You felt sorry for him out there nearly in the first half.
No, I did.
Which you should never feel for a player in the team that are top of the league. And that was the weird thing with this. It didn't feel like Arsenal came into this game and didn't act in any way like a team who were top of the league.
No, they did. They rolled over. But like you spoke there about, you know, Rob Holding and, you know, Gabriel, who wasn't convincing either tonight. But it was just the way Arsenal tried to press, you know, Manchester City. They got the 2 midfielders in Partey and Xhaka. They pushed up high along with the middle three of Odegaard, Martinelli, Saka and Jesus. They looked to really press up high on Arsenal, or on Manchester City, sorry. We know how good Ederson is with the ball, but he just clipped this ball like into Haaland, and Holding for some reason thought, you know what, I'm going to be physical against you. And he's 6'4", he's built like a brick house, and he just rolled him. And that's where the opportunities came from. That's where De Bruyne's goal came from, where he just turned, he laid him off. De Bruyne takes it forward. Gabriel was at 6-7, so he nearly tripped over his own feet. He couldn't get them set. De Bruyne, obviously, I would look at the goalkeeper. It seemed to me like he'd scored from a big distance, so I'd need to see more replays of it. But time after time it happened. And when Arsenal looked to step onto it, try and put some pressure on them, they just played that long ball into Haaland or into De Bruyne, who were able to get hold of it far too easily. And that was a massive problem all night. It's something that, Mikel will have to look at, because he inevitably got it wrong.
There'll probably be a lot of rewriting of history after this game, which would be somewhat unfair of Arsenal, because they were so impressive for so long this season. But you look at them out there tonight and you think, Mikel Arteta's done an unbelievably good job to get that group of players to be in a title decider at this stage of the season. Because aside from those three that you mentioned, and maybe Jesus, behind that there really wasn't very much there tonight.
No, there wasn't. And it's something, it was just, for a team that has been so good this season, they played some amazing football, and what Arteta has done has been phenomenal. I know there's a lot of talk of they've bottled it, but at the same time, look, if you go back, the Liverpool result, being ahead, and then obviously Liverpool coming back, showing that fight. Going to Anfield is very difficult. It doesn't matter what team it is, what form Liverpool are in, they still have the capability of putting in an incredible performance. The ones you'd question were the West Ham. They were winning that game, they were comfortable, and that was the kind of signs. Obviously Saliba's out injured, Rob Holding got bullied against Antonio, and it's something that I imagine Southampton looked at, and then again Manchester City have looked at. Haaland seemed to peel onto him all night, and look, I don't like standing here with you criticising Holding, because I've been in a similar situation where you've played in games and you know how difficult it is, but that's where you have to be street smart. You have to be right. Do I leave him have the ball into his feet? Do I then drop off him? Do I get players around me to support? I know the manager's probably looking at it. It looked like he's saying go 1v1 against them, and it turned to be Arsenal's downfall, because they just couldn't get a hold of De Bruyne and Haaland, and they just gave up far too many opportunities.
So what I am definitely giving credit there to Mikel Arteta for what he's done this season. Tonight, obviously there seemed to be a problem with motivating the players, in that it felt like there was a massive hangover from Friday night in Southampton and they weren't able to get themselves back up. Tactically, are there things he could have done when you look at Trossard, Jorginho, Nelson, Nketiah, Smith Rowe? Is there anything he could have done that would have changed the flow of that game?
Well, it's quite easy for us to know, obviously pinpoint, certain personnel, because you've lost 4-1. But if Saliba was fit, he'd have started, right? And then the rest of the 11 is Arsenal's 11. That's their best team, and that's the team that is predominantly playing all season, and that's why they are in the position they're in. If you lose one player, you're hoping that someone could come in and replace him, and it doesn't cause too much of an effect to the squad. Like Trossard's been excellent since he's come in January. He's seen that with his performances, his assists and his goals. But it can also be quite easy to come on in a game where you are losing and the game has gotten away from you, and to show a little bit of life and show a bit of spark, which can probably be one of the only positive things that Arteta can take from the game. Like Reece Nelson was impressive when he came on, but it's quite easy because Manchester City are in full control and you're adding fresh legs, you're adding a bit of energy. But on the whole, if he had to go again tomorrow morning, I imagine he'd still pick the same team, but he might just tactically change a few bits. Maybe sit off 5-10 yards deeper and leave Manchester City have the ball and leave them carried out. And look, at times they were the back four, or it was kind of the back three, because Ben White would step on to try and get that pressure on, but the distances between them were just too big, and Man City could play that ball over, and it just caused them so many problems.
The fact they ended up taking off the full front four, and like Odegaard didn't have a great game for large parts on Friday night against Southampton, but they just couldn't get him involved.
No, and he's
badly at fault then as well for that third goal.
Exactly. It's the hardest thing with number 10s. When they play, you want them on the ball all game, and you want them in those spaces creating. And Odegaard couldn't get on. Then he starts to drop deeper to try and make things happen. As captain, he ends up turning over possession. And Manchester City are ruthless. They punish you.
Let's talk about City then, and the brilliance of Manchester City, because there's periods there where it's as good as we've seen in the Premier League. Kevin De Bruyne has been outshone this season by Erling Haaland, as everybody in the league has, and there definitely been periods this season where he hasn't been at his best and has struggled for a bit of form, and he brought that into a very unhappy World Cup as well. But when they've needed him this season in the biggest games, has he delivered? And his attitude tonight, he was on it from minute one.
He was. And look, there's probably not enough words in the dictionary to describe him. He's a phenomenal player. I'd pay to watch him every week. Even when you said, like, it's crazy, the standards he's set and the performances he's put in, we expect it, from him week in, week out. And tonight, like, he just showed his class. He was exceptional. Rightly so. He's man of the match. His 2 goals, his assists. Like, what a player to have in your squad. And to think coming into this run-in with the biggest games, where the biggest prizes are on the line, you have him in that kind of form.
It's interesting. John Giles would have always said, he's not a proper midfielder. He plays too far forward to be a traditional midfield type. Tonight they played him like it was basically sort of a number 10, like a 9.
Second striker almost, yeah. It was a second striker, yeah.
That was almost the one tactical thing that Guardiola tried tonight, because he went back to the back 4. There was nothing funny with John Stones playing in midfield or anything like that. It was a straight back 4. He's into his 30s now. He's 31 at this stage, so we should be expecting a decline. Do you think that's actually going to be De Bruyne's role for the next couple of seasons?
Yes, more than likely. Certainly at home anyway, because you can afford to do it, because you're going to dominate the ball. And even away from home, they end up dominating most games anyway. But he almost has this free license. It's like, maybe that was probably the part of the problem with Pep when he was substituting him, was probably he was too rigid. But now when he just plays with this freedom, he played up alongside Haaland, and the distances between them are brilliant, because, like, you look at the amount of times that Haaland has slipped De Bruyne in, and then in the verse we've seen it time after time in games that they've played, De Bruyne slipping Haaland in. They're just a joy to watch together, and they've just struck this unique partnership for 2 lads who've never played together, but they're on the same wavelength, and it's remarkable, and it's almost reminiscing back to the days of Henry and Bergkamp, where one just knows where the other is, and they're both exceptional players. And like you said, yes, Kevin De Bruyne's getting older, but like, he's still going to be around for the next few years, producing performances like that.
It's always so interesting coming to the Etihad, and where our commentary position is just here right behind Pep Guardiola. It's sometimes very hard to watch the game because there's so much going on. And when that first goal went in from Kevin De Bruyne, Pep Guardiola didn't celebrate. He sprinted out onto the pitch, almost reminiscent of Jurgen Klopp and Alisson when was it Divock Origi scored the goal against everybody. Sprinted out on the pitch to berate Ederson about something that had happened 5 minutes later. Like, he was on edge all night. There was things he wasn't pleased with the pressure up top, with the distribution from the back. Like, he got it spot on tonight as well, with the way he went back to the back 4, playing a Kanji at left back. Arsenal obviously thought Saka and Martinelli might make hay tonight. Like, the fact they were both taken off without having any impact at all, once again on a big occasion, Guardiola tactically has nailed it.
Yeah, that is something we always look at. Guardiola's teams, when they play in the big games, sometimes he tweakers with too many things, and you think, like, God, but like, who are we to question him? Like, I think the incident you're talking about, like, after De Bruyne gets the goal, he's berating Ederson, but it was obviously to try and get him to play the ball forward quicker, bypass midfield, play it into the front men, because Arsenal were so high. And if Manchester City had looked to play out, then they would probably, it probably would have played into Arsenal's hands, because they had so many bodies forward. But that's what top coaches do. That's why he's paid the big bucks. It's just, he spots something tactically right. They want to press here with the 7 players. They want to leave 3 back, and they want to go man for man. We'll play the ball forward. We've got Haaland, we've got De Bruyne, we've got Grealish. We're up in those positions, and look, they ran amok. The scary thing is, we haven't mentioned Jack Grealish.
Well, I was just going to say, before we got to Erling Haaland and the customary Erling Haaland 10 minutes, Jack Grealish tonight, yet again, like, he's getting such a run of games at the moment, and the one thing that stood out for me was he was always the out ball on the left hand side. When they tried to invite Arsenal onto them and tried to play it and keep little triangles, it was always with Grealish, and then this little spin and he's gone, and he picks the right ball out every time. Like, there was, again, we all look like fools when we start to doubt these players and wonder, can he step up to Manchester City? Now it's hard to envisage a City team without him in it.
No, it's just I'm speechless with his transformation. Do you know, like what Pep has made him do out of possession? You know, like I've never seen Jack Grealish run 50, 60 yards back to put in a tackle, to put in a block. You're looking kind of going, like, you think this is Manchester City, but that's the standards that Pep sets for his players. Like even at Aston Villa, he didn't have to do that work. He had a free role. But now, like you said, Jack is so fantastic at receiving the ball into feet. When he's got pressure up his backside, he can deal with the ball. And again, time after time, he makes that decision to come inside or drop the shoulder and spin down the line. But he always keeps the ball. He keeps them ticking over. And look, like who would have thought the transformation of him and how well he's become? Like he's a key player in that team now. And like you look at, like they've still got Mahrez, Foden who don't start. But then Grealish, when he's putting in performances like that, he can't really afford to leave him out.
One of the great things when you come to the Etihad is you can usually go down pitch side before the game and get right up close and watch the warm-up. And Erling Haaland took 2-3 shots, tried to whip them in left foot, curl them in bottom corner, put them all wide, and I thought, just getting them out of his system. But then actually it turned out I was onto something, and he was having a rare off night. It was remarkable to watch him out there. He had half a dozen chances that weren't even good chances for Erling Haaland. They were good chances for any striker that you would expect him to take, particularly the one when he was one-on-one with Ramsdale in the second half. But the hair flowed, the goal flowed in the end.
I know. But like, look, it's very hard for either one of us to sit here and criticise Erling Haaland with the amount of goals. Yeah, I know, but you have to, because if that were any other striker in the Premier League, you'd be saying you cannot afford to miss those chances. Now, inevitably his team won 4-1 on the night and he got his goal in the end, but he had 4-5 chances that you expect him to score, and it was just one of those nights. It looked like it wasn't going to come from him. He got annoyed, the headband came off, as you said, the long blonde hair was flowing, something out of a TV show, Vikings, but he managed to stick the ball into the back of the net, and it's just remarkable what he's done this season.
Well, the stats speak for themselves. 49 goals in all competitions, 33 goals, so he's the first player ever in a 38-game Premier League season to get to that level. Goes past Mo Salah. He'll surely go past Shearer and Cole for the all-time Premier League record. There was questions, what would he offer if he wasn't scoring goals? And tonight we saw that. Like, he set up the 2 goals for De Bruyne, but even at the start of the season there were games maybe where there was analysis where he only had 8 touches. Like, that's not Haaland anymore. He was getting involved in that first half in everything. He was dropping deep, he was a nuisance, he was getting in scraps. Like, he knows how to involve himself in a game, even if it's not happening up top.
Well, I think with what you're talking about, it's certainly the way the game was played tonight played into his hands, because Ederson went direct into him. He played a lot more ball into him. Obviously, we know Man City like to keep the ball and they build up, and it's almost like death by 1,000 cuts, where they just keep playing and probing, and they're very patient with the ball. But tonight they just bypassed midfield and went straight into Haaland, so he was always going to get more touches. But I don't think he's bothered. I think he walks off. He just wants the team to win, and he wants to know that his name's on the score sheet. And I think that's a big thing. Like, people question him, would he score goals? I never questioned him scoring goals, but my thing was, Manchester City were always going to score 100 goals, regardless if Haaland was there or not. But now it's just like, we're getting 100 goals, but this fella's getting 40 of them. But it's just remarkable. And like you spoke about Andy Cole and Shearer's record, what is it, 34 goals he's won behind them. Like, there's plenty of games.
He gets to 40.
Yeah, like that's ridiculous. Like, at the moment you think, right, I'd need to see now, I don't know off the top of my head how many home games they have, but any game they're playing at home, you're kind of nearly going hat-trick. You're not saying 1 goal, you're saying a hat-trick.
And you feel he's owed a few after tonight as well.
Yeah, I know. It's just...
It didn't feel like it looking at the Arsenal players on Friday night against Southampton. It certainly didn't feel like it tonight. They are still top of the Premier League at 2 points clear, though City have 2 games in hand and are the overwhelming favourites. Do you give Arsenal any chance, which would mean they go and win all their games and City somehow slip up?
I don't. Look, I said I was on with JD on one Saturday ages ago, and I said I still back Manchester City to win the Premier League title. And the lads in the studio kind of looked at me and I said, they just know how to get the job done. Like, as you said, right, they've got these 2 games in hand. Like, even if they look, you could potentially see them slipping up in 1, drawing it, but not 2. I really can't. They're far too good. And the thing that Pep has is he is such a squad depth. It's just remarkable. And if players aren't flying, he can make 3-4 changes at half time and bring on like for like with incredible talent. So City will do it.
Enjoyable night.
It was.
City in pole position for the title. Great stuff, David.
Thank you, Nathan.
The one thing that Haaland doesn't really enjoy is when a defender really gets stuck into the back of him and makes it physical and gets into him. And I think Haaland enjoys running behind the defender and having the goal in front of him. When Arsenal really got into him and they were doubling up on him at times and getting a bit physical, he didn't enjoy it. He's a big lad, but he's not a very physical centre forward. So maybe that could be the Arsenal tactic tonight. But obviously it's high risk because if you let him go once, he'll score. So. But he's probably the world's best striker right now, isn't he? One of the best we've ever seen. So
it's interesting. I always I thought he enjoyed a bit of aggro. So that's not your sense.
No, I don't think he does. I think the teams that have had a bit of success, the ones that have kicked. Everton really got stuck into it. He lost his rag that game. So I mean, it's a physical game, isn't it? I think despite his physique, he's not an aggressive player. So. But like I say, if that's all you've got, then you think all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah. Let's send Meyler out there to kick him. That's what they're left with, really.
Oh, well, no. My days of doing that now are gone.
OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now. OTB